It's a special episode. This is the 31st episode, 2 in 1 week. I think we'll be doing another week of 2 in 1 week. 2 in 1 week. I didn't want to have some echo in the background there. Closed a tab. And we're just going to have 2 people on the panel. It's going to be me and Fragrance Matt. Anybody out there know who he is? I sure do. And he was instrumental in covering a lot of great, lesser-known fragrances. He has definitely a knack for researching those fragrances that are under the radar. And that is exactly why, for this particular episode, we're going to be talking about fragrances that don't really receive very much hype. And I think that you know what I mean by that. The ones that are not being discussed all the time on live streams or on YouTube channels or Instagram. They're just sort of looked over in favor of the big hype fragrances, the ones that elicit a lot of FOMO. It must be great, so I should have it in my possession. I must have a full bottle. Forget about a sample or a decant or a mini. I need to go full bottle. And speaking of full bottle, I like going full bottles sometimes, especially when it's from Jacques Fat. Jacques Fat green water. My Jacques Fat green water is even more vintage. And it's also a splash. And it smells marvelous. The lemon is still smells fresh. What on earth? This Jacques Fat green water. Jacques Fat green water. See it? And this is a 70s version of it. Not an 80s or a 90s version. This is a 70s version. Mine's more vintage. And mine probably smells more nice. Just kidding. In all seriousness, I just happened to coincidentally find my bottle of Jacques Fat's green water recently online. And it was this big one is 100 milliliters. And it smells gorgeous. Lots of lemon verbena, or whatever a lemon verbena accord there is. And this isn't green in the way that galbanum is, although there must be some galbanum in this because there is a bit of that stemmy greenness, but more so like herbs like basil and the like. And it's beautiful stuff. I took a real risk by getting a bottle this old of Jacques Vabre green water. Given the nature of this type of fragrance, but beautiful stuff. I to be honest, I had never smelled the new version of it. I've been told that it was developed with the intention of keeping the integrity of the original. Like they studied and they follow the original formula, but I don't know if that is necessarily true or just marketing speak. Okay, that's my Jacques Vabre. And hopefully soon we'll get Matt on. Let me just grab my phone. I'm now looking at the chat. Hold on a second. It's daytime. I'm not used to doing it on daytime. I actually took a little time off of work. I usually am working until 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So let's take a look at what we got going on in the chat. We got about 15 people tuned in. I thank each and every one of you. If you'd be so kind, you can send a super chat. I don't beg for super chats. If people beg for super chats, that's fine. That's their hustle. They're making, a living off of it. I have a full-time job, but I also want to make sure that I have a little bit of support for creating content. So if you could buy me a coffee, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, that would be excellent. You could also send me a super chat, send me a super sticker. You don't really have anything to say, but you'd like to support. And your support actually will be recognized. And I have something in store for that. So if you've shown up as having supported in the past several months, I would like to give extend my gratitude in my own way at the end of the season. Somebody actually in the chat before the stream began asked how many episodes are in a season. I suppose it's as many episodes as I can cram in, but I think it's going to be about 39 between the first one that began the first one in September of last year and the last one that we'll be having at the end of May. After that, we're going to go on a summer recess. And what I'll be doing is monthly special editions of Effluvium, because I like my vacation time. As much as I love being on YouTube and creating content, I do have a very busy life. I do work full time, and I like to spend quality time with my partner. I'd like to do other things. As much as I am obsessed with fragrance, do need a break on that. But I'm going to make sure that we have some semi-regular live streams over the summer, and then we'll resume session September 19th for the second season. And I already have some great guests lined up for next season. We haven't set the dates, but just stay tuned for that. I'm going to take a look at the chat here. And pink waving. Good to see you, Heinrich. The Real Fragrance Talk channel. Thank you, Terry. That means a lot to me. And hi there, Supply and Demand. Hey, Dwayne. Good evening. Good evening, Keith. Good question. If you look at the description of today's live stream, you will see a link where you can purchase this. It will give you information on where you can purchase this t-shirt, the I Like It Dirty t-shirt, ambergris, civet monk, Hirasian, Castorian, Indole, and Oud. GMG, nice to see you again. And my friend, thanks for tuning in, at least for the intro. Hey there, James Cratter. And you're most welcome. And okay, you're on the way back from an antique store, and you found a full 30 milliliter of La Nuit. So La Nuit de Paco Rabanne. Oh, wow. Impressive. Is it the Parfum version or an Eau de Parfum? Hello, Philippe. Scent of the Day, Absolute by Elite. Gentleman from Avon. I actually have an Avon sitting here that I'm going to be discussing once we have Matt with us. I see pink hand waving. It's like, is there some sort of code behind? I was trying to figure out what you meant by that. I kind of wondered if that's what was actually going on, but nonetheless, thank you for the wave, and thank you for being here. All right, so our guest should be showing up pretty shortly. I just want to kind of check in and see that everything is okay. Just give me one moment. All right. So if folks just want to tell me what their scent of the day, evening, whatever time of day it is, we'd be happy to know. The Parfum. And 50 bucks is still a great deal. Beautiful. And say hello to Boz for me. Hey there. Glad that you could tune in. I am starting a lot earlier than usual to accommodate for our guest, who will hopefully be joining us shortly. And Terry's scent of the day is Parfums de Marly, Carlisle. And Le Sillage Blanc from Dusita is We Are Sentient's scent of the day. Also a little sex from Rammstein. Das. Du hast. sounding very quiet. I'm used to already having somebody with me here. You can put on another tune. So we did have an offer for a sample pack on Tuesday evening, and that offer is now closed. I'm delighted to say that we actually have 2 individuals who are interested in some of that stuff. Is cool. So the next thing that I want our folks in the chat to do is to ask me, or to not ask me, to tell me and to tell everybody else who's tuned in. What is a fragrance that you can think of that doesn't really get very much attention or thought? And I mean, we don't necessarily have to limit this to vintages or classics per se, but maybe a fragrance that has been around for a minute, that's been out for 10, 15 years or more, that, has existed for some time, that nobody ever talks about, and it makes you scratch your head wondering, why aren't more people hyping this up? Why aren't more people recognizing the brilliance behind this particular fragrance? Tell me, is there one that comes to mind, one that is in your collection, and you just wonder, why does nobody know about this? And they should know about it. Let me know. I know I certainly have a few to share. Mellow jams. I got a few of them. Good call. Yeah, Keith, you and I both know about that one, and it sits around getting no love and no attention. I think both of us have written reviews on Montana Camore. It just so happens I didn't pull it aside, which is a shame on me because that's actually a perfect example. But I'll grab it later and we'll talk about it. I don't have 3 first impressions lined up. I was hoping to have our guest we could just jump in and get things started here. And hopefully that'll be sound, because it'd be really disconcerting if I didn't have my guest. Yes, yes, Arrogantissima, Schiaparelli Pickens. Yes. I did a review on that this week, yesterday, in fact. Have any one of you who is tuned in currently, if you were not already following me on Instagram, what are you waiting for? JJ Colborn. It's the same name. I share my reviews on there. They're the same reviews that I post on Base Notes and Fragrantica. Oh, to give you a development, I've been writing a lot of reviews on things that I don't speak positively on. People have often said to me, why are all of your reviews positive? Why are all the reviews that you share sound favorable to the fragrance you're discussing? Well, because I prefer writing those, generally. But I found a little bit of an inspiration this week to just shoot from the hip and tell my truth on certain fragrances that don't resonate with me. And these reviews that I've been writing, I've done about 20 of them, I think. And they're on Fragrantica and Base Notes. They won't be on Instagram because I guess I could get like a photo of the fragrance or of the sample. But I like to just kind of keep it, limited to the ones that I want to give give attention to that I do feel favorably about, at least on Instagram. They are on Fragrantica and Base Notes, though, and I find that you can use your sense of humor in really fun ways when writing about something that you're not really necessarily happy about or it doesn't please you. And that's what I'm learning. But I'm also learning not to be a dick about it, to understand that just because there is something that I find either displeasing to my nose or not very well done, to try to be tactful about it so that it doesn't come off as insulting to other people who do enjoy it. Be that as it may, I definitely don't get as many balloons on these reviews because that's just the way it is with negative reviews on fragrances. There's always going to be those people who disagree, and because they disagree, they want to pop your balloons. They're just fine. It's not like balloons are currency on that site anyways. Like, it doesn't matter to me. I wrote one on Ganymede, which wasn't a scathing review. I understood that it was a fascinating fragrance, just not for me. It just feels too alien to me. It doesn't feel comfortable for me to have that on my skin. It actually has two ingredients that I have a very difficult time with when used more than in traces, which is safralene and suederol. And I've been pretty outspoken about that, particularly suederol. But if there's some safralene with the suederol, and I said this in the review for Ganymede, it's the olfactory equivalent of something that I have called misophonia. So misophonia literally translates into hate of sound. And it's only specific sounds. So for example, if somebody eats loudly, if they chew with their mouth open, or they smack their lips, or do a lot of crunching, if they do that crunch before they close their mouth, I'm very sensitive to that. And it actually elicits like this visceral response of like discomfort, rage. I'm sure some of you have heard of it. So, not to digress, but I compared it to that. I compared the smell of suederol to the way I feel when I hear people eating that way. It makes me angry. And one recent example of that was also, quite disappointingly enough, Violet Volinka. Christine Nagel used a lot of suederol in that, and I was none too happy. I was really disappointed with that, because it just makes me feel so wretched. Like I don't know what it is about that particular aroma chem. I think safralene without the suederol I can handle if it's dosed judiciously, but you put the two of them together and it's just like kryptonite for me. I can't do it. So forget about like Tuscan leather and all that stuff. Like I don't like those modern leathers. Give me like those old fashioned, rugged, oily, smoky leathers like Cade birch tar, castoreum, IBQ with patchouli and other things, kind of gussy it up. I love those kinds of leathers, but the modern leathers, that try to emulate like patent leather or like the leather interior of like a Bentley, I'm not really feeling it. Back to the chat while we wait for our guest. I hope that Matt is okay. MIA right now. If we don't have Matt, what I may do is see if any one of our semi-regular panelists is available to fill in. Okay. Going back. La Casse pour Homme. Well, funny that you mentioned that. It's sitting right over here. I don't know why it's so far out of reach. I have this in its box. Alan, look at here. It is the short. It's the short ingredients list. Look at that short ingredients list. It's the short ingredients list, not the long one. Short. Look at that. See how short it is? It's so short, it has only 4 ingredients listed. Short. Alcohol, water, fragrance, menthol. Menthol? Menthol. You better not inhale this. There. Isn't that handsome? I'm going to be doing an official review of Lacoste in May. Back into your home you go. I like presentation too. I share. I save all of my boxes. I don't flatten them. I don't want to mess them up. Yeah, this is a beaut. It's a beauty. Hey, Fernando. Lovely to see you. Dave, what's going on? Best drugstore fragrance of the last 20 years. Brutal, classic, intense. Keith, I have to get to that one. I have to do... Hey, to fill up the time here, why don't I just do a first impression of that in real time? Also, I want to close my closet in the back. I don't want everybody to see my business casual shirts. Hold on. There. Brutal, classic, intense EDT. I will be sampling this for the first time. Brutal, classic, intense EDT. I'll put it right here on this wrist. We'll watch that action. Let's get us in there. Let's do this. Let's do it. Come on. Yeah. There. Ooh. 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 That smells like a man. Mm. Ooh. Ooh. Keith, you got to tell us a little bit more about this one. I love it. Lots of geranium. Soapy. A little barbershop-y. A little fuzzy. A little bit of aromatic, herbal. Yeah. I could wallow in that one. I like it. Are they listed under the name Nene Colborn? You'll have to give me the context on that because I'm a little behind. 448 and South 455. Just give me a little context. I don't know what that relates to. Just, yeah, I beg your pardon. Philippe, Towers Le Maroc pour Elle gets little attention. It's gorgeous. Plus, it's his first creation. Rise Noontime Petals is amazing. Shopping is tiring. Tell me about it. I know the one type of shopping that isn't tiring, and that's shopping for fragrance, but the money spent. You gotta be careful with your spending. That was gonna be the whole discussion. Because I know there's some people out there who don't have deep pockets. And they want to smell good fragrances, but they can't spend these hundreds and hundreds of dollars. See, I'm not a good influence. I spend way too much money, so I'm not telling other people to do what I do. I get paid pretty well for my job. I'm not going to tell you anything more about my personal life as far as that, but it does afford me the ability to collect the way that I do. But not everybody wants to spend that kind of money. They want to be more practical. Maybe they're on a budget and they want to try great fragrances without having to dip into their savings, which is a big no-no. You don't want to do that. You don't want to dip into your savings. You don't want to use a credit card if you're not going to pay the balance in full within 30 days. So there's going to be some fragrances that might appeal to you if you're somebody who's on a tighter budget. And I'd like to help people out with that because there's plenty of them out there that are fantastic. They're not all these super rarities like my very rare Jack Fat, my Jack Fat green water. But in all actuality, I'll tell you, I didn't have to spend a ton for this one, and that's called perseverance. That's called take your time, don't act on impulse, don't buy it because it's there, regardless of the price. Oh, it's there. I want it. It's $300. Click. No. You don't want to do that. You wait and you wait. I waited 2 years to purchase a vintage of green water. 2 years until I finally found one that was $75. Just waited 2 years. I don't know. I don't know how much other people are spending on their fragrances, but the little caps on them, I can still smell it. So don't be too quick on the trigger with your Jack Fats, okay? Jack Fat. I'm allergic to the sound of Harry Styles. I can understand that. Hey, Nikki B. Good to see you. Catch up more on the chat here. Yeah, we haven't seen you in a while. Glad to have you back. That is a great green, Fernando, for sure. Yeah, this isn't a niminy piminy. This is no milk toast. It's got a voice. It has something to say, and it's saying it very loudly on my wrist. And I can appreciate that. Depends on what you consider to be brutal. I would say it's bold, maybe verging on brazen. But brutal is much more, men like brutal things. And they like things that are classic and intense. So. The negative reviews. Oh, nay. Okay. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for putting two and two together for me. So I understand. Yeah. Yeah, and thank goodness I live in the Northeast. I mean, I maybe we're gonna have a huge earthquake one day when none of us expected, but yeah, if I lived in California, that would not be happening. Yeah, leaning shelves. It's already risky as it is. So Keith says the Polish company Laplive Miraculum took over Brutal in 2005 and released the intense version of the Brutal OG from the 70s. And Hey Dusan, Scent of the Night, Santa Maria Novella Po de España, salute to Rich Mitch, who has found a vintage version of it. How lovely. I do not have a vintage version of it. The one that I have smells fantastic. Doesn't even have a gold label. Oh, my fave too. I get the carnation now. I get the carnation big time. Yeah, and the similarities to Worth Porom, I can pick up on that. Yeah, I can't get enough of this. It's just like, this is my hobby horse. Yes, green water, Jacques Fath. Found it for a good price. Fernando, good to see you. Yeah, these are pretty much podcasts. I mean, in all honesty, it's they're podcasts. But usually I have a panel. Where's my guest? Interesting. I think what we will do is we will give it until 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, about 30 minutes. And if our guest doesn't show up, that will be a disappointment, but we will see if we can bring in one or two panelists on the fly. All right. Good evening. Oh, Paroli, I noticed you had a comment earlier about how many episodes are in a season. So it's not preset, but I think for this season, before it goes on summer recess, there will be 39. 39 from September to May. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yep, totally. I agree. Bowling green is one of the best bangs for the buck. Gray flannel as well. I am pro gray flannel, even down to the more recent formulations of it. I still think it smells fantastic. I really do. I still think that it knocks out so many more recent niche fragrances that are trying to capture that vibe. And amazingly enough, I think it could still be purchased for $16 or something. So that is testament to the fact that quality of materials, there is such a subjectivity to it. Quality of materials can result in beautiful fragrances, but it isn't a prerequisite by any means. Quality is a social construct. Quality is a matter of perception, and our parameters of quality differ from society to society, culture to culture, where it matters and where it doesn't, you know? Like if we were to say like the only fragrances that have good quality are the ones that you spend upwards of $200 on, then you are suggesting that people who spend less money on their fragrances, or they enjoy fragrances that are within their budget, $50 or less, are inherently inferior. And you can connect the dots. What kind of message is that sending to those people? That they don't have access to quality? Yeah, that's not really a nice message to send. Bam! €7. That is a perfect example for a conversation. Give me a second, folks. Arrogance. Good question. I don't have the answer to that. He did have to depart for various reasons, personal reasons. He may or he may not. We'll see. But we do know that he is missed, and he is in good health and good spirits. But he had to attend to other things and take a hiatus from YouTube stuff. Hello, Aaron V. Good day. Scent of the day, Encre Noir Porel. Mr. God Got Plenty. Hello. Scent of the day, Mancera Oud Vanille. And Dave, you never smelled good green water. Could you briefly describe it? So green water was released in 1947. It was one of the earlier fragrances that was marketed, that had come to be marketed to gents, but I think its original intention was actually just not necessarily gender specific, perhaps maybe with women in mind, but that quickly changed, much like a number of other fragrances that were originally released in the 30s and 40s that would become, marketed to men rather than women. And just as the name suggests, it is a very green fragrance, but it starts off very citrus, mostly lemon verbena. The bottle that I have in particular is shockingly still fresh in that respect. Shockingly, because lemon is known to turn, if not in the most optimum of conditions. So there's this lemon, it's minty as well. It dries down after a few minutes, it's minty. There's a petitgrain, it's herbal, a little lavender, a little basil, some clary sage. And then it dries down kind of musky and fougere with like a coumarin, tonka bean. So that gives you a little background on it. And the perfumer is Vincent Gruber, and he worked with Coty and Jacques, and he also composed Le Mans by Coty, and Illegally, the legendary Illegally, released in 1946 by Jacques. He also composed Canit Satin, which was originally released way back 1920, over 100 years ago. So he was already quite a veteran in perfumery when he composed Green Water, Pour Monsieur. And I hope that was enough helpful information. Anuj is in the gym. I hope that he will be here soon. Maybe I'll just have Anuj jump on. He can be our guest panelist if he can. Hopefully he can make it. Because I'm a little bummed out. What happened to my guest? I hope he's okay. I hope there wasn't an emergency. And you know, we don't have anything to worry about. Fragrance Matt, he's a sweet guy. Great taste, humble, not a gatekeeper, not somebody who espouses beliefs as if they were gospel when it comes to fragrance. Just a normal guy who loves fragrances and has a pretty formidable knowledge and is just so genuine about it. So I hope that he's just running late, because it would be really wonderful to have him join the conversation. Dave, Scent of the Night, Florist Honey Oud. All right. Anyone familiar with the brand Jean de Provence here? They offer great super cheap fragrance with the same ethos as L'Occitane, similar quality to my nose too. I've seen the releases for Jean de Provence on Fragrantica and some write-ups. Not familiar, because the brand isn't necessarily all that accessible to the US. They're not available through retailers or gray market or anything. So I haven't had the opportunity to try any of them, but I've read some good things about them, and they have a lovely price point that would work out very well. It's how germane, because it fits in with the topic, which I think pretty soon I'm just going to start talking about the fragrances that I have set aside for this whole topic. Fernando Milan, about investment. I've been purchasing only when I sell bottles of perfumes I haven't been using anymore. My current balance 2023 is, now I'm reading this very literally. I don't know if that's just a hyphen or a negative sign. -8 + 5. 4 of them backups. So lose 8, gain 5. If that's how I'm reading that correctly. You're most welcome, Dave. Micah, hey. Micah C. Shoemaker. Scent of the Day, Rose 31 from Le Labo. Is Green Water similar to Creed's Green Valley? I wore Green Valley about 13 years ago. I wore it out. That was like a signature for a while. That was back when, yeah, I actually did use my fragrances rather than collect them. But I did wear Green Valley. I had a few Creeds that were in rotation at the time. Original Vetiver, Creed, Green Valley, Bois de Portugal, This is back 2010. This is all pre-Aventus. I got into Creed and was already kind of moving on from Creed by the time Aventus came around. Aventus is like, I didn't really care much for it from the very beginning. I wouldn't say the two of them are terribly similar. You know, the notes breakdown might be similar, but yeah. There's more of like this ambergris accord in Green Valley that you don't have in the Green Water. He is a good dude, and I just hope that everything's okay. Maybe something had come up, and yeah, and I don't know. Don't know what's going on. Buy me a coffee, or one or two or three or four, and you'll be on the list. You'll be on a very important list. I guarantee it. Anyone have thoughts on Dior Vetiver? Found a bottle, but it's a little pricey. Can't help you out there. I'm not very well versed. The private collection for Dior is just not. It isn't a frontier that I've really entered. I'm sure I would be reproached for that. I would be scolded for not having experienced Bois d'Argent and some of the other ones, Gris Clair and Eau Noire. And I know, come on, who actually uses them? I mean, I do use them, but you're not going to have any serious dents because I don't go through phases where I'm wearing only one fragrance for weeks at a time. And I'm also part of that very small neurotic population of people who want to collect and have a little museum of fragrance. Like, let's be real here. You know, there's a few of us on YouTube that have many fragrances, and you're not going to see dents in all of them. Like, there are some, but it's not that important. You know, everybody uses what they collect in their own way. A lot of people collect things and they don't use them. My viewpoint on it is, you know, it's not really my business what people do with what they have, and you know, if they have a collection and they wear it, or they just smell what's out of the bottle instead of even wearing it on their skin. There are no rules. There are no rule makers. There's no standard in which all of us as fragrance enthusiasts must follow. You know, there's no minimum that we should have in our collection. There's no maximum. You know, I'm always wearing fragrance. It's just not going to be much of a dent because there's always going to be all different kinds of fragrances. You know how much of a backlog I have of like samples that I barely have time to dig through. There's like samples that I would love to just sit down and experience for a good few hours, but that will take time, including some of these independent houses that I've hosted here or I have discovered recently, and I'm excited, but it takes time. So that is sort of like assessing and analyzing and spraying and wearing as well. So yeah. Okay, sold 8 and bought 5. All right, I did read it correctly. No, I got it. I think that you were fine. I think it was just my confusion. A big perfume company that have perfumers like Firmenich, for example, I guess, I think that you may be responding to somebody in a side conversation. Scent of the Night Apsu, lovely. From, oh God, why is the name escaping me? Ehrlich. What is the first name? I have one of these. Aperture. I love Aperture from the house. Oh, a Van Gils impromptu review. Yeah, let's talk about that one a little bit. There was a little bit of a buzz about these Van Gils that were being sold from a US seller. And come to find out, these things are not vintage, okay? They're not. No short ingredients list, okay? I can get it, and I can show you. It's not short. Long ingredients list. That's actually a really good idea. How about we do that? Great. Just pardon me for a moment. I need a new office chair. Here it is. And this is why I don't say to people, I think it would be a great investment to buy as big of a bottle as you can. Get a 100 milliliter bottle. I think it's worth it. No. Try to be more practical. Don't make the mistakes that I made, especially in this case, okay? I saw the 30 milliliter, and I'm like, if I'm going to take this risk, blind buy, not having ever smelled this, I don't care how much of this is going on about how it is like amazing and phenomenal. I'm not going to do it. And don't listen to anybody who says that you should. Oh, just go for the big bottle. Trust me. Trust me. You can always trust what I have to say. No, I got the 30 milliliter bottle because I wasn't going to get burned if I wasn't crazy about this. And at this point, I really shouldn't be buying anything unless I'm really excited about it. Because if I'm not really excited about it, I should just have like a little sample vial or a decant or something and then get rid of it if I don't like it. I'm not encouraging that kind of behavior. I'm not doing it. Like I said, do as I say, not as I do. I'm not encouraging other people to be as neurotic as me. Now let's talk about it. Oh, before I open the box, let me show you. Keep the box as is, all right? Look at this, all right? Everybody's talking about it. Yeah, you got to get it. You got to get it. You got to get. Ooh, look at that. No, that's long. That's a long ingredients list. There is a URL. Look at www.vangilsparfums.com. This is not vintage. Not vintage. All right. See that? See? Okay. Everybody's telling me, oh yeah, you got to grab these. They got to grab them while they're hot. Grab them while they're still around. And then what did I learn? After all of that chitter chatter? This is still in production, okay? This is still in production, and you can buy it for a lot less than what I bought it. If you are willing to buy it from a German seller or something. So, lesson learned. Before you take what any of us say that seriously, be sound in your decision making. Cool bottle. I like it. I'm into it. For those who care, you know, the vintage version does not have the silver on top, and it's nice. It's nice. It's not $60 nice for a 30 ml plus shipping. Thank you very much. It's one out of many that I have that smell similarly to this. I'll wear it on this side. I have the Brutal on this side, and I have the Van Gils on this side. Nice. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Got it. I would wear it. I enjoy it. It wasn't the second coming probably when it came out. It's not a grail by any means. What was everybody talking about? It smells like it is from the family of fragrances that actually delineated from So fragrances as Leonard Poron, which I reviewed today, Antaeus, a little bit of Oscar de la Renta pour Louis. It feels a bit redundant, and now I'm out $60. So that's my review on it. A cursory review. I mean, I could do more of a written review. It feels nice. It's good. It's good, but it's like, how many more of these do I really need to have? I mean, there's a few that are variations on that same theme of, you know, the dark, ashy, herbal, smoky, rosy, castoreum, aromatic, yada, yada, yada. There's a lot of them. Think about the perfume industry at the time. It wasn't that different than it is today. Save for the flanker crap, and the scent trends, of course, are different. But as far as business, you had trends. So you had trends where a certain style of fragrance would be released. It would be proven to be a commercial success. And other businesses would pay attention to that, and they would want to have a piece of that as well. Let's release our version of this and see how it goes. Maybe we can take some of that that profit away and sell our own version of it. You know, like Pepsi, Coca-Cola, RC Cola, Shasta. You know, it's all cola. You might prefer the subtle differences in flavor. But are some of the subtleties enough to have 7 different kinds, 8 different kinds? I've gotten to the point where it's like it just gets redundant, you know? Which brings me to, you know, tightening the curation of my collection as it is. Like, I am not buying into the hype the way that I used to. There's all this hype about fair play as well, and I'll tell you a whole story about that too. I almost ended up completing a transaction to buy that. It's a pretty funny story, but I just want to get back to the chat a little bit. We have 36 people on. Thank you, each and every one of you, for joining. If you would like to support this channel, please super chat, super sticker, or buy me a coffee. One of the backups I've bought recently was Roche à Louis. Now, Roche à Louis, pretty singular of a fragrance. I haven't smelled too many things that smell anywhere near similar to that. Thoughts on Bottega Veneta fragrance? Do you own any? I do not. Sorry, I can't help you out with that. Maybe some folks in the chat could. Broly, I have used a travel size of Perfume Roma Aquaviva. It's the only bottle I've finished. If you wear a fragrance that lasts all day once a month, it's going to take you a few years to make a dent in the bottle. Yeah. Like, stop giving people a hard time about dents in bottles. It's not easy, you know, like if you're like a regular human being who's not obsessed with fragrance, yeah, that's going to be easy because you're only going to have like 4 at most. I'm just going to be able to put a dent in because you're reaching for the same ones. Oh, interesting. Algebrius, hi, good to see you. Grossmith event in London. Now, that is a brand that I'm quite curious about. Extremely expensive, but quite a history behind it. Hey, Tripler, howdy. Tripler and his Triceratops. Ulrich Lang, thank you. Thank you, Filippo. Yeah, that's the smart thing to do, Pep. Great to see you. None of this like encouraging people like, I think it's worth it. Get a whole, just get a whole quart of it. Why not? You'll get around to it. No. I mean, really the only time I get larger versions is if that's the only version I can get. If it's only sold in a larger quantity, or if the only one that I've been able to find of something that it happens to be discontinued or vintage is that quantity. If I can find a smaller quantity, I will, and I recommend that to anyone else. Did the guy list it as a vintage? Well, here's the thing. It wasn't listed as a vintage, but I got caught up in a conversation about how they were being sold, and it was just getting caught up in the hype. I caught myself in that FOMO. And other people were saying, I grabbed my bottle. I got a bottle. Did you get your bottle? Oh, I got a bottle now. I got a nice little $60 bottle, little 30 ml. Had I known that it was going to be so similar to some others, then I wouldn't have gotten it. Hi, Mishi. Just sprayed in Love Again to shake off sleepiness. 6:20 a.m. Bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, so early in the morning. Seeing fragrance as investment is a bad idea. We may be in a scent bubble. Buy golden scent. Yeah, an investment, like, we got to stop thinking that way. You know what that is? That's sort of like trying to explain away bad behavior. It's like, oh yeah, I have doubles and triples and quadruples of some of my favorite scents. It's an investment. I mean, I have like some doubles, but I still think about how absurd it is, because I know, I know in my lifetime I'm not going to get through those first bottles. I'm not going to sit here and pretend, unless like the only time that doubles and triples make sense, and this is my humble opinion, is if you are wearing that fragrance regularly, and you know damn well that the people who are buying these doubles and triples and quadruples and boasting about it and saying that they do it are not, because they have like a 700 fucking fragrances. Where it makes sense is if you were really only wearing that, or you have doubles of the 3 or 4 fragrances that you love, like in case it discontinues or what. But it doesn't really, like I said, like, it's not my business, but you do what you want to do with your money. And like I kind of was going through a phase last year where I wanted to discuss like compulsive buying and the addiction behind it. And I still am open to having that discussion, but I don't want to, tell people how they should spend their money, just like I don't want to tell people how they should use your fragrance, But for me personally, like, in my opinion, saying this is somebody who actually does have doubles, which, this is it's like a pathology. It's like, what the fuck? Like, I'm not going to get through the first bottle, let alone the second bottle. But I say this as somebody who did have that phase where I was like, oh, I gotta make sure I have doubles. You never know. It isn't rational, because I know I won't even get through the first bottles. I just know it. Like, I want to dispel all of these like myths, or to dispel all of these notions, rather, in a certain faction of the fragrance community where all of this kind of behavior is normalized. Like, it's like normal. Like, it's not normal. Let's be real. Let's be upfront about it, There was, depending upon where you were, what you were watching and where, and I don't want to really be specific about it, but it's good, but it's just like, I get burned. I get burned. Like, I have to take what anybody else says with a grain of salt at this point when it comes to like hype, Yeah. Oh, true. Givenchy Toi. There was a lot of also rans. I call them also rans. Sometimes also rans improve upon that original idea. Sometimes that's true. There are some examples that I have in my collection where it's like, I actually prefer this to the the original. But it's true. It is definitely true that In the perfume industry, you see these trends. And you can only have so many aromatic, spicy leather fougères. If that, like a lot of them are great, but do you really need to have 18 of them that were released in the 1980s? Like, it's just collecting dust. Like, I don't need that many as a reference. Oh man, Splinter 47, you got a cold. Ooh. Yeah, that's the worst when you can't really enjoy perfumes and fragrance. Like, yeah, I feel for you. Dave says, me too. I really try not to impulse buy. Recipe for disaster most times. Like to try something out and live with it for a bit. It's so smart to do that. Just like if I could prevent people from all of the mistakes that I make, like there are some people I think that are like, do what I do, get this, you need to have it, it's a must have. And frankly, in my opinion, this is something that everybody must have in their collection. I prefer to warn people not to partake in the same behaviors that I've done as a fragrance collector. Like sample it first, sample it first, sample it first. Find a mini. Do minis, okay? Like, some people say, well, the minis, they kind of age not so well. And it's like, well, fuck it. Like better to spend, I don't know, 10, 15 bucks on a mini than to blind buy a full bottle and then come to find out that didn't age really well. Just be careful. Like this is my message. You got to be careful with this hobby. It's expensive. Not all of us are millionaires. Was sent a sample of Givenchy Noir with something I purchased. Horrific. I don't even know what that is, but I believe you because there's a lot of horrific crap out there. Oh, Gentleman Noir. Yeah. Yeah. I would believe it. Yeah. Yeah. If you're talking about Givenchy Trois, that is beautiful stuff. That to me is that if you can sample it, you should. Don't get a full bottle, but sample it. Unless you can find a full bottle for cheap. Which I think, for vintages, those aren't as expensive as some of the others. Dave says, Grossmith Shem El Nassim was gorgeous when I tried it last week. Ah, Joseph Dem, or Demi. Let me know how you pronounce your last name. Joseph Dem. Metal is indeed beautiful. I have both versions. The one you have, vintage, the more recent, is my favorite, is less sharp. Yes. One of the best from the 70s. It's beautiful stuff. Just the hyacinth in that and just all the greenness and muskiness and mossiness of it. Lovely, lovely, lovely. The only thing that I'd buy with an eye to sell is Chanel. It's the Rolex of Frag World. Yeah, I get that. All right, it is now 5:30, and yeah, unfortunately, I'm not getting any response. So what I'm going to do, I'm not going to just sign off. Let's have a good time here. Might as well. I carved out this time to do a live stream. Why don't we just have fun? Let's see if we can get maybe a panelist or two. And just see who might be available. The Estrays, yeah. No, okay, that makes sense. Yes. Okay, so Pep was actually talking about Givenchy Gentleman and not Givenchy 12, which I love Givenchy Gentleman. Pissy honey. And Keith says, I often purchase backups as a last resort to justify the time spent searching for fragrances, late night shopping, nothing much I can say in my defense. It's a pathology dump. But we relate to it. It's not what I recommend to people, but I relate to it. Redundancy is a hard thing to avoid while collecting. It's true. There are only so many innovations in fragrance. So think about that. Innovation doesn't come nearly as frequently as there are releases. And now, in an age where we have countless releases, especially in the past 15 years, and it's just growing, I mean, you have choices with designers and all their flankers and all their exclusives. Then you have all of these different niche brands, and some of them are genuinely niche in the fact that they have a niche approach to fragrance that would actually tap into a niche segment. And then you have pseudo niche, where it's just like, we set ourselves apart from designer. We're actually cooler, but they're still more mainstream than what you would expect a niche to be, which is, we've been finding that happening for the past 6 or 7, 8 years now, where these houses that are labeled as niche are really just fragrances that wouldn't be out of place on a counter at a department store as a designer. And then you have indie perfumers, and I mean, it goes on and on. And you look at that sheer volume of releases, there can't be that much innovation. And when you get to the point where, somebody batty like I am, who has like over 800 things in my collection, which is just, I don't really come across too many things that don't remind me of something else that I've already smelled. And no matter how much somebody's going to convince me, like, you'd love this, you would totally buy it in a heartbeat, like, and I'll smell it. If I don't blind buy like this with Van Gils, if I smell it ahead of time, it is very helpful because it helps me decide, yeah, that's nice. I have a sample of it. I may or may not ever wear it or smell it again. Because it's quite similar to A, B, and C, and D, so on and so forth. Why have an XYZ? An XYZ fragrance that is, incensey rose, or chocolatey de patchouli, or, citrus aromatic, or spicy fougere, or amber. Oh my God, don't even get me started with the ambers. So many ambers smell so similar. And then there's just more and more. Granted, the ambers nowadays seem to lean a lot more toward vanillic amber. They're kind of afraid of that challenging labdanum. Oh, good grief. Oh my God, labdanum. Oh, it just isn't edible enough smelling. But other than that, like the amber accord, you can only do so much with it, and either people are not being ambitious enough, or it's just a lot of releases they want to kind of keep it safe, and it just results in like another fragrance that smells so similarly to something that has been done so many times before. And I also don't want folks tuned in to think that what I'm saying is fragrance is so much better back in the day. Vintage fragrances were inherently superior, because that's a load of horseshit as well. And I'll tell you why. Because if you look at vintages, like I was just kind of glossing on this earlier, there was a lot of stuff that smelled alike too. I mean, I was just sort of talking about with the fragrances of the 70s and 80s. Don't be fooled into thinking that fragrance has really necessarily gone to shit. It's gone more underground. That's what's happened. It's gone underground. You have to find more of the innovation with people who don't have anything to lose, because they don't have bean counters and number crunchers and shareholders breathing down their necks to make something that's going to turn a profit as quickly as possible. You see what I mean? You have to turn to independent perfumers. You got to turn to niche brands that have much more respect for their creative department. So there is still great fragrance being released today. It just, there's been a shift. So that whole narrative of like, fragrance just isn't the way it used to be, and you gotta look a little harder, but there's still great stuff coming out. And whether that is fragrances that draw heavily from the historic fragrances and the classics, which are there and they're done well, and maybe there's a little curveball there that makes it more modern, but fascinating in its own right. There's plenty of those. Or people who are just genuinely innovative and they're using technology with materials, whether they're natural or synthetic, to create smells that we have never really smelled in fragrance before. So I think that it's unfortunate that people have that mentality that fragrance of the past was inherently better. That whole sort of like looking through the past with these rosy, rose-colored glasses is very problematic in general, and that does relate to fragrance as well. And I say that as somebody who freaking loves like early mid-century, mid-20th century fragrances, like the earliest Guerlains and Guerlain and Kevlon and Coty and those early Balenciagas and, you name the house, Jean Patou, beautiful stuff, but not inherently superior. And GMG says to Micah, let's say you have you loved a discontinued fragrance at the current state of the market. It's very likely to double up in price in a few years, so just better get some stock. Yeah, there's something to be shrewd. There's something to be said about being shrewd when there is the expectation, the anticipation they're going to be selling it later. And I'll tell you that I have some of those as well, and I'm just waiting for them to be discontinued, waiting for them to be no longer in production. And you got to do what you got to do. Sell. There's nothing unethical about that. Sampling is the healthiest habit. Sample before you buy if you can. Blind buy at your own risk. I have blind bought because of suggestions from, Barbara Herman, because I kind of trust what she's saying. And Neil Chapman, Perfume in Search of Your Signature Scent. I'm not blind buying because of, some Tom, Dick, and Harry YouTuber. It goes for me as well. But if you do blind buy, go for it. I mean, I'm not responsible if you don't like it. But there's very few people where I would, and I still don't think it's a good habit at all. Dying to try a vintage of Aromatics Elixir and Magie Noir. Yeah, try to find a mini. Just don't spend too much money, please. Just be careful. Be patient. Like I said, with the green water, I waited over 2 years to find a bottle that seemed to be a reasonable price. I wasn't spending $300 on a vintage green water. No way. I waited until it showed up for $75. And that's what you should do too. Okay, Gentleman Givenchy, yes. Love Gentleman Givenchy. Love like that. It is so out of step with the times, and that's why I love it. Jacques Bogart's For You was the best blind buy I've made. And hopefully you didn't spend too much, because I think that's in production again. And I've heard that it doesn't smell any different from the older versions. Oh, well, you know, if they're charging that much just for a mini, then just forget about it. Try to find like a site that might be able to, that might offer it, you know, a decant or a sample for less than that. No, I wouldn't bother. I mean, it's supposed to be gorgeous stuff. I actually haven't smelled it, and you know the reason why. I'm not going to spend that kind of money on a mini. I'm certainly not going to spend that kind of money on a full bottle of it. I trust what other people say. If somebody wants to send me a sample of it, that'd be cool. I'm not blind buying that kind of stuff. Well, if you look at it that way, because this is the thing, Fernando, is you're wearing it often. That seems to make sense. Yeah. It makes sense if you actually know that you're going to be wearing it often. Hey, Duncan. And Tripler says, I bought an 8-ounce Coochie Porome. Coochie Porome 76, my favorite cologne. And Writhing Days, I think that's something else. Was looking for a backup, then realized I was losing my mind. All about sales, safe bets, save your money, save your money. Hey, Not in the Know, good to see you. Jonathan, what's going on? No worries. Unfortunately, it looks like our guest is not going to make it. There may have been some sort of emergency or something. I'm not sure. Just hope he's okay. Jonathan, if you would like to be a panelist, if you would like to fill in for Fragrance Matt, send me a message on Instagram. You could be our guest if you're willing, and we can talk about stuff, talk about fragrances that don't really see much hype, that deserve more attention. And Paroli says, the labdanum in La Couche du Diable smells like a freshly opened can of tomato paste. It's so good. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I never thought of it that way, but nonetheless, I do love that labdanum. And I'm fairly certain that the labdanum that's used in that is a fractional distillation from Bolling called hydrocarboresin. So if you want to look it up, I'll put it in the chat as well. And I have some of this, and I think that Sheldrake put a significant amount of it in La Couche du Diable. La Couche du Diable. Jonathan Scent of the Day, Yoji On. The one thing I don't like about vintage decanting from built-in atomizers, or you just gotta tear them apart. In general, built-in atomizers are trash. 50-55 fail. And it does seem like it would be a pain in the arse to even try. All right, we're all caught up. Tripler has a Scent of the Day, Oleg Cassini. Do you have the Jovan version or the late 80s version, mid 80s version? I have the mid 80s version. That's some good juice. Ah, phooey. Maybe some other time. I'd like to have you in at some point, rather. GMG says, I don't know. Furio smells like a gender bender kuros to me. I'm not particularly fond of that kind of late 80s masculines. And that's fair. I respect that. I mean, I can get into it, but it's an acquired taste. That's not going to win everyone over, those kinds of scent profiles from the late 80s. Furio's like that. And they even have one from the early 90s, Rocco Barocco Joint, Porom, Molineux, Lord kind of falls into that category. Puig, Sybaris. Yeah, buying from Italy is the pits. I mean, you're not far, but it's really tough to buy from Italy here in the States. 35 people on. Thank you very much. We do not have a guest. Our guest is missing in action. We hope that he is well and there is no emergency. I am looking for a panelist. As much as I don't mind blathering on ad nauseum to all you folks, I do prefer having at least a cohort to bounce heads with, bounce ideas off of each other and have a conversation. And I'm currently on the search for a panelist. So I don't know if anybody follows South Beach Perfumes on Instagram, but if not, you should, because they did a story, or a reel rather, where they showed this impressive collection of minis. And being the lunatic that I am, of course, I had to do screenshots because it's a video and it's going at a certain clip. And I'm doing screenshots what is that? What is that? I've never heard of that. Just these scores of minis, some of the classics that I know and love, and then others what in the world is that? South Beach Perfumes. Check out their Instagram. It's one of their most recent posts. And it just so happens to be the daughter of the mother who ran the business. It was actually a retail store for fragrances that opened in 1979. And she had uncovered the mini collection that her mother had that she was collecting from the late 70s through the early 90s. Check that out, though. You know what? That's actually a very good suggestion, and shame on me for overlooking him as a guest panelist. That's entirely my responsibility. He's a cool guy. I like Kellen. I don't think that I could catch him on the fly. I don't think I could do that at such short notice. Duncan says, I remember Fragrance Matt and his grandma compared Lapidus poem and chorus. I think she preferred Lapidus. Yeah, I actually think Lapidus poem might be a little bit more accessible to certain people, as brazen as it is. Yeah, and that's a shame. There's a few lovely things that are being sold out of Italy too, including some Italian brands that very seldom come up from any other seller except for those in Italy. I need a panelist. I can't do this the way that Eugene does it for an hour or two. I can't. I need a panel. I start running out of ideas. I start running out of things to talk about. And I'm constantly thinking to myself, am I boring the shit out of people? How in the world do I even have 30 people tuning in to me right now? I don't know. In the meantime, while we try to find somebody to join me in the panel, under these unexpected circumstances, I suppose I could talk a little bit about some of the fragrances that I pulled aside. And there happens to be one fragrance that I think is quite unfairly maligned. Not really sure why. Nobody talks about it. But a lot of people's dads and granddads had it, and that is Donna Canoe, or Canoe. This is an example of a fragrance that had originally been marketed to the ladies, and then they changed their minds because the women were stealing it from the men were stealing it from the women. Oh my God! Back in the 50s, no, whoa, are you serious? That's not very macho, is it? Huh? So, you know, people who say that masculine fragrances are masculine for a reason. I mean, who's that dipshit who used to do fragrance reviews and now talks to underage people on Omegle? Did a video about how chemists and scientists actually formulate fragrances based on the biology and chemistry of the female sex or the male sex, which is like such utter bullshit. Like, totally pulled it out of his ass. Like, what the fuck are you talking about, dude? Like, yeah, go to Omegle instead. You don't know what you're talking about. Stop making fragrance videos. Canoe and Old Spice and a few others, actually, were originally formulated with women in mind. And the men were wearing them as well, and they realized the men actually enjoyed them more than the women. So much for that theory, right? And there's more where that came from. So, is anybody a fan of Canoe? I bet there aren't too many. Seems to be looked over. A lot of these drugstore fragrances get looked over. This one is really nostalgic to me. Oh, where is it? Short ingredients list. Short ingredients list. This is very glossy, kind of hard to find. Just in case you care. And the thing about this is if you want a short ingredients list version of Canoe, you still only need to spend, I don't know, $30 because nobody cares. It's just like another brand that I'm going to be talking about in a moment. So, hell yeah, that's right. My dad wore it. My dad is awesome, right? My dad taught me not to be a douchebag and to treat people with kindness and respect. And he wore Canoe. So, Dana is a house, or Dana, depending upon how you would prefer to pronounce it, has a lot of history. And the thing about Dana, it was always intended to be an affordable fragrance house, but it wasn't short on quality. So Canoe was originally released in 1936. It was composed by Jean-Claude, master perfumer, composed a number of classics during that time period, 20s, 30s, 40s. And this opens really aromatic. There's this fuzziness, lemony, very lavender-like. Lavender almost kind of reminds me of a more toned-down Pour un Homme de Cologne. Clary sage, a lot more clary sage, actually. And then my favorite duo in perfume comes through, carnation and geranium. This is a more powdery, vanillic fragrance, though, than some of you may be used to. Oh, there's a siren. They're coming to get me. They're coming to take me away. I just have the window open. It's 85 degrees in April, and it would be too stuffy otherwise. This dries down really vanillic. There's like this heliotrope note, and I am a sucker for heliotrope. Tonka, coumarin, musky. If you find Pour un Homme de Cologne to be much too lavender forward, then, but you like that in theory, you know, the combination of lavender, vanilla, and musks, then Canoe might be something you'd appreciate more. But nobody really cares about it. Yeah, I don't know what version of 90s Canoe I have. This one isn't like, it isn't excessively vanilla. This is much more, in the dry down, it's much more heliotrope than vanilla. And what is heliotrope? What in the world is he talking about? Heliotrope. So heliotrope doesn't have an essential oil, doesn't have a natural material from which to extract. Actually, heliotropine is used to create a heliotrope accord, which, interestingly enough, heliotropine doesn't occur naturally in heliotrope. That's the magic of the chemistry. So heliotrope flowers are often this deep purple color, or they could be white. They grow very low to the ground. They have this delicious aroma that kind of reminds me of like this perfumed, Play-Doh-y, kind of like fresh, like kind of like hot apple, not hot cherry pie, like the cherry pie in the crust. But there's also like this perfumistic kind of floral quality to it, powdery, vanillic, almondy. Nothing is like smelling heliotrope flowers. It's like it makes you marvel at nature that a flower could have this kind of aroma. So heliotrope was a note that was popular in the early to mid-century. And I pick up in this one, not too far into the development, it's much more heliotrope forward. But it has this fuzzy, musky quality to it as well that does epitomize like old world masculinity before the 70s. Because let's face it, like before the 70s, whoops, that's the box. Before the 70s, you didn't have beasts. You didn't have beast mode fragrances. You had refined, genteel fragrances. And the favorite notes that would be used would be things like lemon and bergamot, citrus, some carnation, sandalwood, a little herbal, a little soft, a little plush, a little just reserved, conservative, not too flashy, not too flamboyant. But there's a certain prettiness about them. You know, this is before things got really kind of rugged and rough and tumble. There are some similar ones to this one, like Zizanie from Fragonard. It's not saying it's in a similar category. Royal Copenhagen. I don't know how the later versions of Canoe were, if they just got more like two-dimensional vanilla-like. That could be the case. But I like wearing Canoe. I do. And I'm glad that I have it there. I'm glad that I have it as part of the collection. This is an example where I would much rather have Canoe in my collection than Van Gils. Because, like I said, had I known that Van Gils was so similar to you know, God knows how many other fragrances that I have in my collection, I wouldn't have bought it. It was a blind buy. Live and learn. But Canoe was like it's historically significant too, you know. So. Thanks, buddy. I appreciate it. No, I do appreciate that. You know, we love Matt, but I've never had on my my show a no-show, so it's kind of a little jarring, you know. Like, people cancel ahead of time, and that's fine. Gives me time to kind of find fill-ins and stuff, but I've never actually had somebody just pull a no-show. And I'm sure there's an explanation. I don't want to come to the conclusion that he's being inconsiderate. There could very well be something that had come up, but it's a little disconcerting. Thanks, Dave. Thank you. Oh, there's some references to Canoe from The Sopranos. Did Charlie ever release a scent marketed toward men? So Charlie was actually under Revlon. And Charlie was a woman's master brand. There was never like a Charlie Poiron. But, I mean, a literal Charlie Poiron. But if we were to really explore a little bit, we could probably think of fragrances that might smell somewhat similar to Charlie that were marketed to men. There's plenty of them out there. I mean, for every style of fragrance that was marketed to women, I guarantee at some point there was a version marketed to men that was either tweaked a little bit or just straight up like no different. You couldn't tell the difference. You couldn't tell what gender it was meant to be marketed to, but it would be marketed to men. You know, you can think of so many examples of that, like Cinnabar, Estee Lauder, JHL, Hermes. There's a lot of examples of that. Aramis, which is considered a very masculine fragrance, was actually very similar to Bernard Chant's. He was under the tutelage of Germain Saillet. So you can imagine how much influence that had on his work. He also composed Cabochard. Now, Cabochard and Aramis, one doesn't necessarily smell more masculine or feminine than the other. Right? Like, it's pretty crazy how we have this power of suggestion where it's like, oh, it's for men, must be for a man, men only, masculine. Ah. And then if it's for, you know, for ladies, madam and elle and madame and wait, I already said madame, Miss Balmain. Miss Balmain, oh my God, like if I were to put a sample of Miss Balmain and like if it were just not labeled, if I didn't identify it and gave it to someone, and I say, yeah, this was really like a very successful fragrance for men in the late 60s, I'm sure people wouldn't even give it a second thought. Hi, Simi. I don't think I've seen you before, but I'm glad to have you here. Thank you for tuning in to our live stream today. Is Canoe similar in vanilla powderiness to Guerlain Abbey Rouge? Yes and no. Both have a lot of vanilla in the dry down, but Guerlain's Abbey Rouge has a variation of Guerlain in the dry down that makes it fundamentally different in its development in the dry down. So I wouldn't compare the two. Two very different styles. Yeah, and actually Brut is the same for me as well. Nostalgia does play a big role. Nostalgia plays such a big role in so much fragrance that I enjoy. I mean, a lot of these fragrances I smelled as a child, and it's been explained time and again the close proximity of the memory center of our brain and our olfactory receptors and how that information is translated. So it takes us to certain sensations that we may have felt at another time in our life, especially when we were young and things seemed safer and less harried and less complicated. And for our brains and our memories to be ignited through fragrance to allow us to relive that, there's something to be said for the power of scent to do that. And I think that plays a huge role. And I get that through wearing Canoe or Brut or Old Spice or even things like Abbey Rouge or Aramis or Equipage, because they were in the ether as a child. I may have not have known what it was or where it was even coming from. But for many of us, our memory is so powerful that we can remember something that we smelled that we hadn't smelled in 30, 40 years. We may not know where, who, what context, but innately we'll remember. So when we smell that, it lights up these neurons in our brain that take us to another time, another place, sensation. It will conjure up memories, maybe memories that we haven't really visited in a very long time. Yes, Charles Revson. Charles Revson. That man. I have that man in the closet. Don't get any wrong ideas. But I have that man back here stored in what happens to be that closet. And There's a funny story about that man, and I've mentioned it recently in another live stream. And what I want to do is I just want to double check. So there's another person in the cosmetics and fragrance industry, a woman, who was not too keen on Charles Revson. Thought he was a bit of, let's just say, a douchebag, or kind of a little cocky, a little arrogant, a little bit of a pain in the ass, if you will. And I think it actually was Estee Lauder, if I'm not mistaken. And when he would come up in conversation, he would be referred to as that man. There is actually a book that is titled That Man, The Inside Story of Charles Revson. Let me see if I can bring up the story. Not the book. I'm not going to do a recital, a reading of the book, but just the story of how that man was named. I have to replace the A key on my laptop, so I'm typing a little bit slower than I'd like to. Let's see if I bring up Estee Lauder. Just trying to do a little search. When Charlie Met Estee. Okay. This is from a New York Times article, and I don't currently have a subscription. All right. Actually, they tried to meet as little as possible. Charles Revson, the founder of Revlon, greeted. They gave me all but 30 seconds to read because it's the New York Times, and I'm not going to subscribe to the New York Times. I was actually looking forward to reading that. It looked pretty good. It was a good article about it. But it was, in fact, Estee Lauder, who referred to him as that man. And because Charles Revson had quite the sense of humor, what did he do for his first men's release? He named it That Man. And That Man is actually the epitome of one of those genteel, reserved, citrus on the top, powder in the middle, sandalwood in the back kind of numbers of the 50s. It's good stuff. I actually have the 80s version of it when it was re-released. Give me 1 second, I'll show the bottom. Here you go, That Man, Revlon. Complete with the plastic atomizer. Very sharp, handsome bottle, the 80s version. Veneris Rederi, aka Derek, has discussed much about That Man, and you should read his review on Base Notes, The Scented Devil. We've had conversations about Revlon fragrances. Let's kick something here. Sorry. All right. So handling that. As Rich says, excuse me whilst I hydrate. So would folks like if I did these one-on-one, not one-on-one, but if I just did these kind of streams where just me talking? Like, is this enjoyable? Effluvium goes solo. Let me know if you want me to do these. Maybe I'll do it as sort of like a summer series. And Duncan says, still curious about that Eucharist, but it's a bit pricey for a blind buy. You have to be careful with the blind buys. You don't want to get burned. It comes with my recommendation. I would say go for the EDP. And this is only hearsay, but the EDP is supposed to be quite similar to what the EDT used to be until there were reformulations. So I just sort of took their word for it and went straight to the EDP, and I think it is fabulous. Oh, well, we don't know if he's being a weirdo, but I appreciate that you think that I rock. I think you rock too. I'm glad to see you, Marcus. Oh, yikes. Well, I didn't really want to explore that. I mean, I just hope that he's okay. I always thought he was a nice guy. Yeah. This was this like before I started really getting into the story, or I'm sorry, GMG, that I didn't even see that. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like, it's all about perception, and I agree with you, Miss Dior. You know, if you were to put Canoe and Miss Dior, you know, compare the two, I would feel the same way. I'd be like, Canoe seems like the one that was meant for the ladies, perhaps, and Miss Dior was for the men. And that just goes to show you, it's like it's not easy to peg gender and fragrance since it's all a matter of perception and marketing. And Dave is asking me if I have a favorite florist, anything that stands out for me. I happen to be partial to Elite. I know that might be kind of like a predictable answer, but I find Elite to be quite lovely. Pardon me, I will be right with you in a moment. I'm just going to play a little bit of music while I step away, and I'll be right back. Thank you to the 42 people who are tuned in. If you would like to support this channel, please buy me a coffee, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Send me a super chat, send me a super sticker. It would be much appreciated, and I will be back in just a moment. Okay, continue comments here. I'd like to think so, Dave. Thanks. Roca Barocco. Which Roca Barocco? The Roca Barocco Roca Barocco joint pour the ladies' Roca Barocco, which is supposed to be pretty nice. That would be in your wheelhouse, Jonathan. I think you'd appreciate Eucharist. EDP is what I recommend, only because of the hearsay that they say that the EDP currently is like the EDT used to be. Is it true that Eucharist is mentioned in the 007 book on Her Majesty's Secret Service? But it's the villain Darko who wears it, not Bond. That's what I've read as well. I can't confirm that. I have not read on Her Majesty's Secret Service. Thanks, GMG. Maybe I'll do these once in a while over the summer, you know, without a panel. This fireside chat. Well, not a fireside chat in the summertime, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I mean. Yeah, I still would love to try Tralala if given the opportunity. Thank you. Thank you very much, Jonathan. I have a lot that I could say about a lot of different things here. Um, Thanks, Keith. Thank you. It seems like it is received very well, so I'll do these a little bit more often then. Yeah, that one is, I was curious about that one because of the smokiness of it and having a smoky fougere. I'd like to give that one a whirl. Oh, so what I was going to talk about with Fragrance Mat about houses that seem to have little to no discussion surrounding them is Faberge. We already mentioned Brut, but we don't hear much about the other Faberges. We don't hear about these releases from the mid-century like Wood Hue. Ooh, attractive little bottles. Wood Hue. A little bit of that Wood Hue just spittled on me. It's a beautiful woody fragrance. So these, and it was marketed to women. Another example of one where it's definitely unisex. Jasmine and wood, and lucidity as well. So these Faberge fragrances, Faberge, much like Donna, Faberge was never like a top tier house. For much of his existence, Faberge was accessible to your average middle class or even working class individual, where you could buy Faberge at a department store that, you know, it wouldn't even need to be like a Macy's or a Nordstrom. In fact, I don't think they would be there. They wouldn't be sitting on that counter. You could go into, I don't know if any folks from the US, particularly the Northeast, remember a store called Zayre, Z-A-Y-R-E. One of the Faberge fragrances that I picked up, the box, actually has a price tag for Zayre. And Zayre was not a high-end department store by any means. It was a discount department store. But you could buy Faberge. Another Faberge, beautiful bottle. I love this sort of like marbled sort of look to the cap. This one is Aphrodisia. Aphrodisia is another one that very nice green tint to it as well. And all ripe for rediscovery. People are not talking about them. People are not talking about Faberges. Tigress from Faberge. And you see the Faberge classic script logo here. Can you see that okay? I'll be getting a better camera soon enough. See, Faberge. I first remember seeing that logo on Faberge organic shampoos. Faberge organic honey and weed germ shampoo that my mother used to buy when I was a kid. This is Tigress. So I don't know if anybody knows a group from the 80s called Rough Trade. They were from Canada. And there was a song called High School Confidential. And one of the lines, the lead singer, she sings, she wears Tigress by Faberge. She makes me cream my jeans. That's actually another line. High School Confidential referenced Tigress. It was a song that came out in 1980. And Tigress is actually, even though it was released, I think, in the 40s or 50s, it was very popular through the 70s and the 80s. As sort of a grab and go, spray on and set it, forget it kind of classic. But none of these, like, nobody's talking about Faberges. I got some more Faberges are going to be coming up soon too. Why? I mean, they deserve the attention as well. And they were well done. They were well done fragrances. So yeah, Faberge Brut was the name of the company for quite some time. Alfonso asked me, JJ, what is your top 5 wood fragrances? Oh, goodness. I have a tough time when put on the spot here, but that's not your fault, it's mine. Just as far as a recall on favorite wood fragrances. So when you ask about wood, what my brain does is I think about, well, what kind of woods are you talking about? Are you talking about cedar wood? Are you talking about sandalwood? Are you talking about Maybe some less common woods like oak wood, kayak wood, pine wood. So some woody fragrances. One of my favorite woody fragrances would probably be Perfume Roma Arso, which smells like conifers that are, it's the needles and the wood and the resin that's exuding from the trunk and the bark of the tree, and it's in an arid location. It smells like the hot sun beating down on like ponderosas and other types of conifers in and like more of like a desert kind of setting. I think that's a gorgeous woody scent. For sandalwoods, one of my favorite sandalwoods is actually Sandalo. Sandalo from Lorenzo Villoresi. Beautiful stuff. He has the talent to create the feel of Mysore sandalwood in spite of the restrictions to its use. So for a more recent sandalwood fragrance, even in more recent versions, it is impressive how it smells much more Mysore. That velvet, buttery, suave, textured kind of sandalwood. So that's one of my favorite sandalwood fragrances. Other woods. A really good cedar fragrance, and I featured this in a review that I did last year, and this is a cheap and cheerful one. It's appropriate for the theme. Graphite from Montana. Excellent cedarwood fragrance. Epitomizing that Virginia cedarwood, pencil shavings, kind of cedar, very aromatic, kind of like the smell of cedar that you would put into like a hope chest to save those heirlooms and wedding dresses or whatever you're going to put in that hope chest. That one's really great. That's actually a Nathalie Laurson. And it's argued that is to cedar what Encre Noire is to vetiver. So that's a really good one, too. Loving the solo Effluvium. Thanks. I might have to give it a different name, though. In fact, after this, since I've been left with no guests, I think I might actually label this differently. Because it's only Effluvium by name. This is more of a different format it's turning into. Interesting. Yeah. Well, what kind of data are they using? Are they just is it just like the people who say it's similar to, or is it somebody at Fragrantica who made that comparison? Because people who compare things, you really only want to take that with a grain of salt. The Poron, yes, the Chipger or the Fupra. That sounds a little too much like Fupa. Chipger. Bond actually wore Blend 30 in a post-Fleming novel. Now, if Anoush was around, he would confirm that Blend 30 was a one and done. And a one and done means that they never really had any subsequent formulations. They were only on the market, I think, 5 or 6 years at tops. So in that short time span, Bond apparently got a hold of it and started wearing it, and he must have been quite forlorn at its discontinuation. Thanks, Marcus. It seems like there's an overwhelmingly positive response, so I will seriously think about it. I'm getting more comfortable with it as we go along. I'm feeling less eager to bring in somebody tonight. Just keep going and just keep doing what I'm doing, because it seems like you folks are enjoying it. So Aussie Mark said Roca Barocco smelled great like a barbershop, but it was likely the East African civet. So real civet? In London, they're just a few doors away from each other. Florist and Trumper, beautiful shops. A lot of great Trumper fragrances too. More love needs to be given to GOF Trumper. And that isn't limited to you, Chris. Like, I love Wild Fern. It's just like this very old world fougere. It gives you an idea of what Fougere Royale was before, we had Rodrigo Flores Rue's version of it, which is wonderful in its own right, but Wild Fern is much closer to what the older version was. And also, there's a great violet fragrance that was intended for gentlemen called the Giaccio Violets. Beautiful stuff. It's a green juice. There's some goodies. And of course, a lot of people appreciate the sandalwood, which is really lovely as well. Although not vintage, any thoughts on Comme des Garçons, a fave from the brand? A fave. Well, I have the Comme des Garçons that I have back there. So far in my collection, so far, as if I'm planning on getting much more. Not if I can help it. Got to save money for vacations, Joseph. The Comme des Garçons that I have Incense Avillon. I have CDG Man 2. I have the original Comme des Garçons, which is actually one of my favorites, the original from 1994. This clove honey fragrance. Beautiful stuff. Speaking of Faberge organic shampoo, there's actually like a moment in the development that reminds me of the way that shampoo smelled, but I love it. There's also some more recent, there's Sequoia. I love Sequoia. That's actually one of my favorite woody fragrances. So to answer your question even furthermore, Sequoia from Comme des Garçons, lovely stuff. Very deep, rich redwood kind of smell. Almost like mahogany-like, which brings me to another great wood scent that I enjoy, long discontinued from Etro, Mahogany from Etro. Great peppery, prickly kind of woody scent, beautiful, long discontinued, very unknown. Very little is discussed about it online. I think I did post a review of it on Fragrantica, but I think it was like one of the only ones. But I have some others from Comme des Garçons. I have Calamus, this great kind of tropical, watery green scent. Marcel, which is this one of my favorite soapy scents. It actually came out last year, I think. It was, or 2021. And am I missing any there? I think I pretty much covered all of them. Oh, no, Comme des Garçons 2. Not the man, but the Comme des Garçons 2, which is a great 90s aldehydic. You didn't have too many aldehydics, but leave it to Comme des Garçons to release an aldehydic scent in the late 90s. And that's stellar stuff. And Keith says, I'm hoping to find Blend 30 without spending $250, and I do not blame you. Perseverance, my friend, just keep being patient, save searches. One day it will happen. Yeah, it's just, this is one of the things. If we get on here and we start talking up stuff, it makes an impact. We're a pretty close-knit group of nutty people, Like, I've found that if I just share a review of a discontinued fragrance on Instagram, and I know that there's one or two that are on sale, and I actually did this for somebody just the other day where I said, like, hey, there's one on eBay, grab it while you can. And they didn't even get to it on time because somebody else bought it. And I just somehow feel like I'm responsible for it. Like, I just created the hype on this. Like, I just dropped a major hype bomb on this fragrance, and now everybody is just like clamoring for it. And I'm like, what did I do? Like, how do I express or profess my appreciation for a fragrance without doing that? I don't feel like I don't feel ashamed of it. I just feel kind of conflicted. It's like, I don't know. It's kind of tough for me to reconcile Na 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 na. Baby super chat, baby super chat. I can sing fucking better than Casey, honestly. He was never really known for his voice. Yeah, I don't mind a super chat. It'll be fun. Help a brother out. Time is money. I could be working overtime right now. If you have a very important statement to make and you want to make sure that it's read, if you just send me a super chat, I'll guarantee that everybody gets to hear you out. And if a super chat isn't to your liking, buy me a coffee. Coffees work too. I'll bring up the, there you go, in case that's more your thing. Yes, Brian, you knew what I was talking about. I'm glad that there's at least somebody who knows what I'm referencing. Because I'm a big music nerd too. Like other than big things for me, the three big things for me, for people who know me well, they already know. It is fragrance, music, and the natural world, the natural realm, being outside. I believe in being outside as much as possible. That's why I'm not holed up doing like live streams and being on the internet on the weekends. You notice on the weekends, I might be sharing stuff on Instagram, but I'm not doing streams in the middle of a Saturday, my day off. Like, I need to be out and about. I need to enjoy the world. That's a good one too, Keith. That actually, when I did a Woody Fragrances, that was another one that I had reviewed late this past year as Le Lit pour Homme Lyon. Dave says, I wish I could super chat 1 pence. On Dan Schufrick. I'll put on another track here. Let's see. Now, I just have to make sure I play a track that isn't going to mess with copyright, and I do have a few of those. I like having a little tune playing in the background. It's kind of nice and sets the tone. Joseph Aboud, one of the best cedar frags. Duncan, you may be shocked to learn that I don't know about Joseph Aboud. I don't. I think I've heard of it, but I'm not familiar with it. Indiana's Durga Cowboy Grass smells like Northern Nevada. Sagebrush. Absolutely beautiful. It doesn't last very long. Mishi, yes. Fianagi. I would say that's like even more so one of my favorite pine fragrances because it's more so the resins and the needles than the wood itself. But yeah, I have such a fondness for Fianagi. And it's so sad that that is even less attainable to people who really shouldn't have to spend that kind of money for one of those Glaciels, those awkward Graziels, you know, the tall black skyscraper bottles, you know, they're going for that really gothic look. And the cap kind of reminds me of one of those old antennas that they would put on like a car back in the 60s. Yeah, it's a shame that it's become so expensive. You know, with Palo Santo, I have a tough time with Palo Santo as an essential oil, like the natural Palo Santo. There's this weird kind of, it's not quite minty. It's just sort of like this sharpness. And sometimes I do appreciate sharp, but it's a sharp that just penetrates, and it doesn't jive well with me. I think if it were in kind of like the background, I could deal with it. But in a way, I'm glad I didn't discover, like, I'm glad that there aren't too many, like, really forward Palo Santo scents. Because the essential oil is really tough for me to tolerate. There's just something that hits like a nerve. Like these top notes in Palo Santo, it's really tough for me to deal with. Uh-oh, I can't see what Boz is saying. Somebody needs to brief me. Let's keep it nice, though. Kicks and Sense, not appreciating certain persons who make certain videos, artificially pumping the Dior own market with their videos. Yeah, not my circus, not my monkeys. I don't even know what to say about that. I'm not necessarily approving, but what can you do? The Copper's one that I've tried. It's nice. I didn't fall head over heels over it, but that's a nice one. Thanks, Tripler. And since I'm really behind, Dave, and I don't recall what I was saying 9 minutes ago, since I'm obviously perpetually behind, just let me know what in particular I was talking about that time and what you would like to smell. That would make sense. Yeah. Yeah. But that's clever. That's clever. It is a Botany Chafour. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate a lot of what he does. Yes, 1881. People seem to overlook that, the fact that it does have this really lovely dry down, the Taruti. Peppermint sherbet. I haven't tried those. Wouldn't mind trying them. I really don't know. I don't know about that douche for. And John 1970 sent me a healthy decant of Chipotle. I'll wear that funky mushroom if I can find it. One of my favorite fragrances of all time. You heard it here first. If you haven't already seen it on Fragrantica on my top shelf. But I love Chipotle. C2G Chlorophyll Gardenia, a green that I like. I've been looking into gardenia fragrances. I want to make gardenia a thing again. I want to make it like a note that women and men can be enthusiastic about. As I say that, there's actually this Nemat oil. This is gardenia, and this is an oil. This was actually, I got this at like I got this at Whole Foods. And it smells kind of like, it's really aldehydic. It kind of reminds, like, it kind of smells like a cross between like Chanel No. 5 and Chanel Gardenia, but even better, if you can believe it. And it's just like one of these Nemat fragrances. People sleep on these too, and these are like sitting in Whole Foods. Some of these are pretty damn good. So see me says or asks JJ, if I was wealthy, I would ask you to be the curator for the US East Coast version of Osmotech. You probably could open a small version with just your collection alone. I would love to go and see. I'm flattered by that, but there's a lot of gaps in my collection, and I have to keep it that way because I'm not as wealthy as some might think, and I don't have as much room as some people might think. But I do appreciate that. I think I have like a pretty decent representation. But I don't think I could do like the East. I don't think I could do the US East Coast version of Osmotech. I could probably collaborate with a few people to create it. But thank you. That's very kind of you. It's a labor of love, though, and a costly hobby. So, folks, I have 37 on right now. I don't see any coffees come through. Guys, I'm dropping all this knowledge and showing off all this shit, and you don't want to send me even so much as $5? Come on now. Send me some, show me some love. Send a couple of coffees. There's some people that regularly watch me and they haven't sent one coffee yet. And that means your name's not going to be announced at the end of the Effluvium season. And that's going to be a little embarrassing considering you're here every week. So think about that, all right? Help a brother out. And I'm not just spending it on fragrances. I have some things in store, and I'm keeping it a surprise. And that includes guests, and guests that not many other people can get. Oh, yay! Here we go. Thank you, Dusan. And there I am, like, bitching and complaining about not getting any super chats. And lo and behold, because I was so far behind, thanks. It's much appreciated. I really, really do appreciate it. Duncan, apparently your wife has very little tolerance for a lot of fragrances that you love, which I can relate to because my partner, Bill, is not a fan of fragrance much at all. So we make that work out, but I'm not wearing much of what I love around my guy. So I relate. Serge Noir, yes. Fernando, I have tried Serge Noir. Serge Noir, it's a tough one for me because I love Lorenzo Villoresi Piper Diagram, which is much more of a pepper scent. There's the same texture and prickliness that I can get with on Piper Nigrum from Lorenzo that is a little too much in Serge Noir. It's almost abrasive and unsettling. I appreciate it, but I can't enjoy smelling it. I guess that's the most tactful way of putting it. Frankly, not everything that Christopher Sheldrake has composed finds me moved, and that's one of them. Comparisons of Fianagi to Peachy Morning in Tipasa. Cole, I have never heard of Morning in Tipasa. Making a note to myself to check that one out. Morning in Tipasa by Pierre Guillaume, if I'm not mistaken, is what the PG stands for. And I'm sure you're already long gone, but Jonathan, it was great to have you stop by, and I hope you have a wonderful evening. Okay. Finally catching up. All right. Yeah, give it a try. Give it a try. I just love it. I love it. It's just kind of like there's this wild clover kind of scent, like a field of clovers in early summer, like in the mid notes. It's really, really nice stuff. Another one in a similar vein would be English Fern from Penhaligon's, which I also have and really enjoy. The two are not too similar, so that I felt like I only needed one and not the other. It's like same theme, but this is an example where it's the same theme, but each do a really good job in their own style. English Fern from Penhaligon's and Trumper Wild Fern. Yeah, check it out. Check it out. There's a lot of great ones. Namat. I like Arabian Wood from Namat. The sandalwood is lovely. There's a musk one. There's a couple of musk ones, Egyptian musk and Himalayan musk. The amber. Yeah, there's some good stuff from Namat. Yeah, they don't get enough love. It's not just like, upscale housewives and affluent communities that should be wearing Namat. It should be a lot of us fume heads who should be appreciative of what they make. And Cole says, speaking of Sheeple Mousse, I'm about to get another prize sampler set. What's your pick? Heliotrope or Empire d'Azine? So Cole, it all depends on whether or not you are already familiar with and love other heliotrope fragrances. I have both of them. If you are a heliotrope fiend, I would say go for heliotrope. If you love resinous, heavy, Oriental / amber style fragrances in the vein of Shalimar. But you love things like a Papanax and Tolu Balsam and those like more cinnamic, sweeter toned but earthy resinous kind of balsams, then you'd really appreciate Empire d'Azine. So just think about what you might be more in the mood for and just follow that. But both are great. And Tripler says, I always wondered about Wild Fern. Wore Fougere Royale to bed last night. It's really great. Don't care what the snobs say. Oh yeah, though the Rodrigo's Fougere Royale is lovely. I really do appreciate it. Great dry down. Mm-hmm. And Sheeple Mousse is extremely challenging for me. What an amazing fragrance. Yeah, it can be very challenging. And I would say the reason why it just comes naturally to me is because I like things that are unapologetically organic, because I am a man of the woods. I like being in the woods. I like being up close and personal with nature and those scents. Not everybody is that type of person. They're much more like urbane city type people who like natural smells in theory, but when it comes down to actually being in the woods and being in very like wild environments, that might be a little tough for them. But I love that. And that's the reason why I love Sheeple Mousse. Wifey beats me when I commit impromptu spending. I hope we can sort that out. Oh. Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, no rush. I mean, it's just I appreciate your willingness to help regardless. Much love to you. Appreciate it. Yes, and I remember you suggested Ennui Noir. That's a nice one, a nice heliotrope. Lovely. All right, so we're going to do a little moment of meditation. I'm not looking to hypnotize people, contrary to what people think. This is going to be just sort of like a reset to kind of relax and kind of reflect on the past, oh God, over 2 hours now. We're at the 2:24 mark, and we'll get that started in a moment. Oh, I thought I had the video lined up, and I guess I don't. Well, that's annoying. What are we going to do for an intermission? Religious experiences. I like fragrances that feel like a religious experiences. Well, this is quite unfortunate I don't have my intermission. I suppose I could use this intermission for now. Let's see. Share screen. Oh, no. And that completes our intermission. Paroli, Empire is so good it gives me a pure endorphin rush. Yeah, that's some lovely, lovely stuff. Ooh, one of my favorite orange blossoms is this Sevilla Love. You know, that waxiness in it as well. It's just something unctuous. Great stuff. Thanks, Cole. What I'm heavily inspired by is analog television. You know, the days of television where the pace was different. So you had interstitials, you had intermissions, you had test cards, slides. I love the feel of like educational films from the 70s and early 80s. The use of analog graphics like Scanimate and Toaster. So there is an aesthetic behind all of this, and I'm so excited that you are tapped into that and you know where I'm coming from. But that's exactly the kind of vibe that I'm going for. I'm 44 years old, so I don't have too much recollection of the 70s, but a lot of the 70s was left over in the 80s for sure on television. So I absorbed a lot of that, and it's a huge influence on my aesthetic. So thank you. Benny Hill. Yeah, I loved Benny Hill. I used to sneak out of bed in the summertime and watch Benny Hill with my older brother because it would come on at like 10 on our local UHF station. Yeah, that was stuff I really probably should have been watching at 7 or 8 years old, but he was funny. And he was so cheeky with those pretty ladies. And the guy with a bald head, much like mine. Loved Benny Hill. Imagine that was PBS before Bert and Ernie. No, Bert and Ernie were around when, Bert and Ernie were around from the beginning on Sesame Street. That's the first season, I think, which is 1969. I don't have a recollection of what public television was at that time. That's when it was actually called NET, National Educational Television. And that's when they'd have like a little logo that looked kind of like a house with a roof and an antenna, and they would go burr, 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 burr. So my recall on trivia is not limited to fragrance by any means. It's also like television, music, you name it. If you need a good trivia team member, I'm your guy. The pace was indeed different back then. I recently watched the OG Superman from 1978. The interest credit sequence lasts 10 minutes. I love it. A lot of sitcoms were like that too. They actually had like full-fledged theme songs. And they would go for a while, yeah. I used to love the Doctor Who opening as well, with like that sort of that swirling tunnel in the music. I think that was like was it like BBC Radiophonic Workshop that composed that theme music? Yeah. You have me figured out there. That's exactly what my master plan is. Let's see if we got any coffees here. We got 35 people. Just checking in. Got some coffees. Got a coffee cup. Thanks, Paroli. It worked. Thank you. It worked. All right. So I think I'm going to stay on. Started at 4:30, 5:36, 4:30, 5:36. We'll run into a little after, the 7:30 mark. I think I run out of steam after about 3 minutes. I got some other things to talk about. I guess, I can just like pick up and start chatting a little bit about the rest of the stuff that I was hoping to talk about with our dear fragrance Matt. One of them happens to be something that I don't even think you need to get a vintage of because it just smells like this lovely Apopanax heavy Nag Champa, and you can buy it for a little ditty at Ciara from also Revlon. This is also Revlon. You don't even need to get a vintage. Like, fuck that. Just get like the $12 bottle at, like a rack store and call it a day. It smells freaking awesome. So good. There's like this, almost like this like bubblegummy kind of sweet weirdness at the top. Like this like Obviously synthetic tuberose, but I just live for it. It's just good juice. I don't have Jean 2 with me as well, but that's another Revlon that is Ace. You can buy it for like a pittance. Well, sleep tight, my friend. Thank you so much for joining. And you know, another one that people don't really chat about all that much. I don't know. Maybe Ramsey has, but I'm not really keeping tabs on him. Canon cologne. I have a long history with Canon cologne. So when I was a kid, so I'll show you. This is like the '90s version of Canon with this nice solid hunk of wood. Actually, where's the? Oh, I have like an older version sitting over here, maybe like early '80s, '70s. Check out this bottle. Check it out. Look at those O's. Those O's with the slashes. How Scandinavian is that? I actually read that Canon is just some sort of like, it doesn't even mean anything. It's just meant to sound Scandinavian. With the O. The O doesn't need the slash. They just wanted it to look Scandinavian. Let's open this. This is like a little bottle. Cologne. Canon cologne, natural spray. This will be the next scent that I'll spray on me. I'll do a little comparison, a little real-time comparison, you know, like I'm doing a comparison series video. Wish I could do more videos. I'm a busy man. I'm sorry, I can't pump out videos once or twice every day. You just have to settle with like one a week, if that. But if I did, I'm sure you would enjoy it because I have so much to talk about when it comes to fragrance. I wish I could do these 1 to 2 hour videos and just tell you every single aspect about all these fragrances and so on and so forth. Oh, which reminds me, I went off on a huge tangent and I meant to tell you exactly what my history is with Canon. But I want to spray the old version over here. Yum, 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 yum. Okay, and the newer 90s version, both have these solid caps. This is the epitome of that style that I was talking about earlier, where it's just like powdery, woody, aromatic, nothing too muscly, just really, really debonair, very, very proper. Yeah. So when I was a kid, and I used to love, and I still love to do this to this day, find old magazines. I mean, occasionally I actually will read the articles in the old magazines, but let's face it, you look at these old magazines, you thumb through them, and it's the advertisements, it's the cigarette ads and the food ads and the ads for you name it, like just the way things were advertised back then are just so like out of date, like and like not politically correct, which just gets a laugh out of me. It's just hilarious, but just like beautiful. There's something beautiful about like it just, you know, the way that magazines were printed at the time, the ink. It was a very different method. It was very low tech compared to the way it is today. I mean, hell, people don't even really get magazines as much today as they did back then. But there were also the cologne and perfume ads, and the ones that I loved were the Canon ads in the old magazines. And then my dad, my pops, got a bottle of Canon as a gift. And I thought it was like the fanciest thing in the world because it had this wooden top to it. It must be exotic. It's from a faraway land where everything is just idyllic and utopian. You know, Scandinavia, come on. And this wood. So I was obsessed with it. And I was obsessed with it to the point that in the 90s, because I was not a very mainstream kid, let's face it. Like I was kind of like a punk rock, indie rock kind of kid. I wasn't really like a normie kind of kid. Really wasn't. I wore like horn rimmed glasses, dyed my hair. or like, you know, at one point I was wearing clothes at the age of 20, 21 as if I was a mod in the 60s, you know, like I wasn't like a mainstream kid. So I didn't really give a shit as to whether or not my fragrances were contemporary or modern, or, you know. So I bought myself a bottle of Canon. This must have been like 1998, 1999, at a store that I used to frequent. Well, I still frequent it to this day, actually. It's still open in Nonantum, a neighborhood in Newton, Massachusetts. So this is when it was in Harvard Square, Cambridge, called Colonial Drug. And at the time when it was in Harvard Square, it actually was a drugstore as well, and they had a pharmacist. But Colonial Drug was... That juice looks ripe. Which one, Paroli? You're talking about this one? This dark one? It still smells good. It looks ripe, but it still smells good. Yeah, this is just the color. It looks a little dank, but it smells great. Both of them smell great. So at Colonial Drug, they were renowned for carrying a lot of great fragrances. I mean, they had the whole 9 yards. They had all the classic brands, you name it. I mean, impressive collection of the Jean Patou and the Lanvin and the not Chanel, but because Chanel is a whole different story. They're very particular about their vendors. They had Caron and Galan and the Creed, and I learned about so much going to their stores. At the time, I was completely new to it. This was like sort of like this is when I started going in there. This was like the very earliest beginnings of exploring, you know, fragrance as a hobby. And one of the first that I picked up was Canon, and to this day, I have a soft spot for it, and it doesn't get enough love, and that's a shame. So that's my story about Canon. And then shortly after that, I got 2 others, Equipage and Abilouge, and the rest was history. And it wasn't a very linear development, my perfume hobby. It kind of came and went, kind of like I kind of put it on the back burner, got obsessed with other stuff, became a DJ, was really collecting records more than anything else, and sort of had a little infatuation again, set it aside, learned perfume making. I was a self-taught, I wanted to be a perfumer, so I was self-taught. But then I put that on hold, on hiatus, and while I put that on hiatus, I was like, why not just get back into studying fragrances again? And then it really exploded. And here we are today. Oh, cool. Lagerfeld photo and Old Spice. It just smells like any other time but today, that's for sure. It reminds me of wood paneling. Wood paneling should come back, preferably real wood. But that's Canon. I do have a review of it on Fragrantica and Base Notes, and check that out. Over here. Colonial Drug. Oh, have a good night, Manly Sensed. Good to have you with us. Yeah, Colonial Drug. I mean, everything was called Colonial around here in New England, so John Adams probably used to buy his frags there too. I don't think it's that old. I think it was open to the 40s in Harvard Square, and it's still around. And they have like a lot of fragrances still, like a lot of discontinued stuff, things that are just stock that they're still holding on to. It's a very cool place. Those Norwegians, they love their wood. Whoop. Isn't what good? Hey, how are you doing, Justin Desar? Isn't Canon good? I mean, I hope you mean Canon. That it's actually getting to that point where it's kind of getting a little bit darker. Maybe I'll put a little, maybe I'll shed a little light on the situation. This dreadful lighting that I have. It's basically a reading light. I should be using my Buy Me a Coffee funds to get myself like a proper light. Because look at this. This looks like a horror show. Let's change this lighting a little bit. Look at that. I look sallow. All right. It'll do. Gonna stick around a little bit longer. All right. And GMG says Gucci Envy was my first fragrance. I bought backups. I'd be rich now. You sure would be. That demands a pretty penny. So I've had other fragrances that that I would wear as sort of like a signature one that I would just stick with for an extended period of time. One was Helmut Lang Cologne. That was when I was 22. Loved that one. And I'm trying to think of some other ones. I wore like Marc Jacobs, which was like sort of a fig scent. That was in the early 2000s. That's when I was just trying to like, pick up people and get laid. So I was a little bit less inclined to wear Canon or Abbey Rouge. But nowadays, like I'm not picking up anyway. So I have the freedom to wear whatever I want. One of the most pivotal days was walking into Barney's, New York, and learning about Serge Lutens and Frederic Malle all in one day, and becoming a fan. And that was like 2007. If only I had kept some of the things that I bought at the time, because there were some really great formulations. I was in love with Vetiver Extraordinaire, and that was one that I wore a lot. As far as Comme des Garçons, one that I never replenished, there was one summer that I was wearing, and it was summertime. I mean, I didn't even think of like seasons. It just seemed to work for me. It was Comme des Garçons Incense series, the Kyoto. I wore that. I wore the hell out of that one summer of like 2010 when I was a DJ. I got a lot of action wearing that one, I must say. Oh yeah, Marc Jacobs in 2011. Yeah, I first picked it up, I think, when it was first released. The one with like the sort of, it looks like it was like designed by like Frank Lloyd Wright, like this very rectangular rounded edge with the cap. Does Colonial have a soda fountain? I'm sure they did at one time. That was long gone by the 90s when I first started visiting it. All right, so what are some of the other ones that I set aside? Oh, Trussardi. Not Trussardi Uomo, but the original Trussardi. Everybody talks about Trussardi Uomo, but the original is like this animalic chypre that was released for the, it was marketed to the ladies. I don't hear anybody talking about this one either. What gives? Shit rocks. And Niki de Saint-Phal. I don't know what the differences are in the variations of the batches and formulations and stuff. Whatever I have here is pretty damn good. Like Niki de Saint-Phal. Yeah, Saint-Phal. I believe this was released in 1982. Just going to bring up a cheat sheet here. I'm pretty transparent about that. I'm bringing up a cheat sheet because I can't recall everything off the top of my head. I don't have that kind of talent. Oh, I was right, 1982. And this would be sort of in a similar vein because it is a floral leather chypre. I've said a lot of things about silences from Giacomo. So it has a similar vibe to that. It's very green, very herbal, very sharp at the start. The Artemisia, it's a little minty even. And then it dries into more florals and orris. But it's just the leatheriness and just like a bit of this. It's a bit of an IBQ leather, but more muted because we're talking the 80s at this point. So it's a little bit more muted, more mossy, more woody and musky in the dry down. And check out these snakes intertwined. Can you look at that? The Parfum bottle is pretty beautiful too. So this is blue glass, Niki de Saint-Fall, and these snakes. Let me see, Niki de Saint-Fall on the bottom, on the top of the cap. I don't hear anybody talking about that one either. That one's not really a big hype machine. Oh, getting back to Faberge, just talking a little bit about Faberge. McGregor cologne for men. Somebody said that, you know, I should check this one out. I overlooked this one. I wasn't aware that this was a nice one, but McGregor cologne, like note, Scottish, yes. Tartan, that looks like a kilt. You're making it seem very Scottish. McGregor came out in 1983, and this, to me, feels kind of like maybe a precursor to Giorgio Beverly Hills Red for Men, but we're talking maybe about like 7 years prior. So it opens kind of like sagey and lime, citrusy, very vetivery, kind of oddly incensey. Another one that it kind of reminds me of is, it's kind of like a cross between like Polo without some of the Pioneer edges and Red Beverly Hills. Giorgio Beverly Hills Red for Men. This is a lovely little splash. I mean, even the cap kind of is like, yeah, I'm kind of like Polo. See, I even have a similar cap. Good stuff, though. You can still have it on the cheap, even though it's been discontinued for a long time. It's a nice wear. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, they're very sleek. It's cool stuff. And this is like a leather patch right here, the stitching. Gravity by Coty. I used to have Gravity when I was 14. It was in my stocking for Christmas. Yeah, I mean, I don't have it now. It's kind of like with some fragrances that I wore when I was younger. I kind of wore the hell out of them, and it's like, I just don't really need to have them now. Like, it's just, they were there. I have a history with them, and I don't really need to. I mean, I suppose it'd be nice to have one to just kind of sniff and kind of bring back some memories. But honestly, like some of my adolescent memories, I'd rather just kind of keep in the past. But yeah, I had Gravity back in the day. I wore that. I wore Drakkar Noir. I wore Obsession for Men. Polo Green. There's a few other things. Aspen, you know, usual like teenager in the 90s. And Davey says, I'm just looking through some vintage samples and I've just come across Yendi Capucci. Any thoughts? I did a review for Capucci, Yendi, on Instagram just a couple of weeks ago. So check that out. Dave, if you want, in real time, I will send you a link to the review that I did just a few weeks ago on Capucci's Yendi. So just bear with me, folks. Just as a courtesy for Dave. All right, I sent that to you on Instagram, so you can check out that review on Yendi. What is my favorite bottle design? Good question, GMG. Favorite bottle design? That's a tough one. Like not just for a house, but like it could just be like a single fragrance and and the bottle design and just wows me. There's a few of them. I don't know if I want to step too far away because the one that I'm thinking of is downstairs. But it's by Charles Jourdan, and it's called L'Insolent. How about I do this? GMG? I'm going to send you, just like I sent Dave, because I don't feel like digging it up right now. It's downstairs. But I'll send you a chat with a picture and my review of L'Insolent. This is kind of a fun thing to do. I'll just communicate this way. Hold on a second. I find this to be one of the most spectacular bottles, and the juice ain't too shabby either. Okay, and there is my picture and review. And let's see if I can send that to GMG. There you go, my friend. That is on its way to you. Check that out in your chat on Instagram with the review. That was posted May 25th, 2022, about a year ago. Another one, I mean, honestly, Guerlain's Vol de Nuit, or Sullivan also used it. The propeller bottle, iconic. One of my favorites. As far as like more recent bottles, I loved the series that Diptyque did for Benjoin Bohème and Quinona. Beautiful. The etched glass. It's sort of like it's etched sort of like almost like making it look like it's like Claquelin style, like it has little cracks in it, little like creases. I can grab both of those bottles. But as far as more recent bottles, I think they're absolutely gorgeous. Hold on a second. I'm a sucker for presentation, just like many of us are. And yeah, a big part of collecting and the enthusiasm is the way that the fragrance is presented, its box, its bottle, the artwork, and so much effort that's put into that. And we don't see that nearly as much. In fact, with this particular series, Diptyque is now just putting them in their regular bottles. Like maybe it was just too cost prohibitive to keep using this style. Actually, Chemononth has been discontinued, but Benjoin Bohème is going into a regular bottle, maybe as a way to save on costs. But yeah, this is Benjoin Bohème. See that? And Chemononth. See? And I love these little chunks that are kind of embedded into the cap on Chemononth. It's beautiful. It's very kind of like almost Art Deco. But the love, look at this. See? Isn't that detail beautiful? Yeah, those are my favorites. For more recent ones. And I'll show a couple more. Give me 1 second. And another beautiful one, this is a Nino Cerruti Femme. And can you see the detail on this cap? So this cap actually is not your typical cap. It fits right onto the atomizer, like so, and you can spray with this on. And it looks like a skyscraper or like a monolith. And then the bottle itself, it has this curvature to it. See this? It evokes really a sense of movement. And this monolith, it's kind of like a stalactite and a stalagmite, and it goes right into the bottle. See that? Brilliant design. You just don't find design like this in bottles. And then I'm also a sucker for, much more sensible, straightforward design, like, for example, like Monsieur Couturier with a chevron shape. Jean Couturier, that's the insignia. Monsieur Couturier. Very dignified. Love stuff like that. And that particular font, very 70s. Earth tone. It's a wonderful leather scent. There's some favorites among many. If I had more time and energy and was more equipped, maybe I should just do a whole live stream sometime of favorite bottles, favorite presentation, what have you. There's a lot of them, though. I mean, I even like Open. I mean, some people think it looks kind of wonky, but I think it's very cool and very ambitious that they did something asymmetrical. And you gotta love Optima font. There's the Optima font, and Open is written in sort of an Optima font or something that looks kind of like it. Funky stuff. Like, I like that. Cool. It's great fragrance, too. Jacqueline Coquelin and prestige version of Niki de Saint-Phal smell pretty much the same. Can't comment on the more modern versions. And I think I have the Jacqueline Coquelin. You're welcome, Dave. Yeah. I don't think it's the prices have really gone up, though. More likely to wear Aramis 900 or Cabochard than Gravity now, but it still has memories. And yeah, it's great to revisit memories like that, Love Aramis 900 and Cabochard. Lovely choices. Hey, Ricky Tomatoes, good to see you. Will vintage formulations get a revival, you think? Like, what kind of vintage formulations? Like, do you think the way that fragrances were formulated during a time when fragrances were vintage, that those formulations will get a revival? Well, I hate to say it, but that's never going to happen because a lot of the formulations from then are using things that are now restricted or banned. So if we're looking before the 70s, that kind of vintage, and it ain't ever going to happen the same way. But there are really talented and innovative perfumers and perfume and scent chemists that have the ability to reconstruct in as best a way as possible. As far as the results, they vary, but I'm not cynical, and I don't think that it's that we'll never go back. It's more of a challenge, given the limitations and the changes with what materials can be used. Take, for example, nitro musks. You're just not ever going to go back to nitro musks. They were proven to be a problem and potentially dangerous for excessive use. And those were banned by the late 70s, early 80s. And yeah, and it's really hard to construct certain things that use those nitro musks. But there are other musks that replaced them that approximate really well. It's just a matter of cost. It's a matter of how much money it is to use those replacements. And that's really the biggest problem, is replacements. You may have houses and producers of fragrances that have the budget and they're willing to spend the money and invest and to retain the integrity, and then others who are just riding on the name and the brand recognition and just hoping that people don't really notice the difference, which we actually were talking about that a little bit on our Tuesday live stream. And it is unfortunate to gaslight consumers, so to speak, into saying, like, what you're smelling is the same as it used to be, but you just have this feeling like, no, it isn't, because it isn't. And that's happening a lot in the fragrance industry, unfortunately, but not all across the board, but in many instances. All right, let's see. Jean got me a 50-ounce glass Charles Jourdan Factice. It holds 4 beers. Fun to drink from. Ah, okay. Yeah, I know that one. Is it Asia though? What is it called? It's is it Asra or something? Yeah, that's cool. It kind of looks kind of like a jewelry box kind of thing, or like a little container with the stripes. Yeah, it's kind of a neat one. Aja. Yeah, there we go. Aja. Asja. The Bijan Men bottle. That's iconic. Yeah, Bang is an iconic bottle too. Oh yeah, the Capucci bottle. Yeah, but that one's kind of neat because it actually has that wire brush on top. That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's a neat design as well. The Dioron bottles. Yeah, the Nino Cerrucci is, my God. Yeah, that one slept on too. People talk so much about Nino Cerrucci, and Fair Play, but nobody's really paying attention to that. The Nino Cerrucci Femme is like a voluptuous, like opulent floral chypre in the late 80s rather. It's great stuff. Pierre Dinan, best bottle designer, certainly one of the best. Pierre Dinan. Forgive me, I'm having sort of like a lapse here. I'm going to have to remind myself of Pierre Dinan. Please forgive me. I'm probably going to be ashamed of myself once I remind myself of what he has done, which I'm now looking. And he's behind some of the world's most iconic bottles, and I'm seeing some of the beloved ones here. My God, I got to brush up on my bottle designers. He did Madame Rochat, Opium. Okay, oh my God, embarrassing. Eau Sauvage. And did he design? Wow, he did the design for Wilhelm Perfumery as well. Wow. Very cool. Yeah, I think I need to get better acquainted with the perfume bottle designers. Obviously, yeah, he did some of the most recognizable and iconic bottles for sure. Wow. Yeah. Yeah. The Montana. Exactly. That's a really cool one. Simple elegance is nice too. Love those. And Justin says someone should buy the rights to discontinued fragrances and go non-IFRA and call it Resurrection Perfumes and put out the old school stuff again. But here's the thing, Justin. There are people who, I mean, it's like what I was saying earlier in the stream. You just have to dig a little bit deeper and look at some niche houses who are sort of already doing that. I mean, they can't really necessarily go against IFRA compliance, especially if they want to have a market outside of the US. But they are reconstructing original compositions to the best of their ability and doing a great job at it. And take, for example, Elisa Elegrand does a great job with that. A lot of these old formulas that they're revisiting and reconstructing. And like Mushipra, what we were talking about earlier, I'd be damned if that didn't have like a good 1 or 2% oak moss in it, but it can't. And it sure does smell like it. It has less than 0.1%, but they did a really good moss accord in it. So it's possible, and it is out there. I think that you just have to pay closer attention. I'm trying to think of a few other houses that, I mean, Santa Maria Novella still kind of holding true to their compositions for the most part, in spite of the limitations. Like, I am of the firm belief that you don't need to get a vintage version of Peau d'Espagne. I mean, the current one is balls to the wall. Like, I can't imagine how big of a margin of a difference like the vintage would be from what I have in my possession. So yeah. And once again, it's mostly the EU that's the enemy here. IFRA is just complying with the EU. If you want to look at the real enemy, it's the EU. They're kind of fucking things up. And there's a whole backstory behind that. And I don't really want to get into it because I'm running on over 3 hours now on this stream. The super fragrance bottle's a neat one. Yeah, I love the logo, the horseshoe logo. Yeah, Shipa Palatin. So that, yeah, the bust bottles. Woof. Oh, yes. Brilliance of Design, 112, Z14. The original Halston for women as well. Yeah, great stuff. Okay, so we have 33 people tuned in. I'll run for about 10 more minutes. I think I'm going to rebrand this stream. This turned out to not be an Effluvium. I mean, it says Effluvium in the corner. That's what I was expecting, but I think I'll just call this an Effluvium special edition or something, post haste, because just to keep in line with, you know, the theme of Effluvium, just kind of set it apart a little bit. And just checking a few things. Somebody bought a coffee. It's anonymous, but whoever that anonymous person is, it's much appreciated. Much gratitude to you. Thank you very much. And I think I've pretty much talked about almost everything that I set aside here. Oh, one more. Oh, Avon? Yeah. Foolish me. There's a few more over here. So one more that I want to talk about before I sign off for the evening is the House of Avon. Sounds so chic. Avon. People sleep on Avon. Nobody cares about Avon. You can buy Avon for barely anything. But, I mean, can we talk about this? Weekend cologne. I know I'm looking forward to my weekend. And look at the stopper here. Weekend cologne. So weekend cologne would make great bedfellows with Jacques or Jack Fat Green Water, Jacques and Weekend together at last. Oh, I'm green with envy at the love affair they're having. So as much as I'm thrilled to have my vintage green water that I spent so little money on because I was patient, I waited over 2 years to find one that was only $75. Oh, I'm sounding very sultry right now because I'm near the mic. So the Weekend here is this delightful green aromatic herbal mossy splash from Avon. And I picked this up for, I don't know, $25. But look at this. Go back to like cool bottles. Like, look at that font. Like, I feel like I'm about to watch Evening Magazine. You gotta love Avon. I should just do like a whole. That's what I should do. I should just do like a whole Avon live stream. Just Avon. 4 fluid ounces of it. It's a splash. Tripler asks, have you ever sold a fragrance and immediately regretted it and needed to rebuy? I've done that a couple of times. I did. I have. I'm trying to recall some examples, though. So once upon a time, when I thought that I was too good for Creed, I find that kind of amusing, because I had a ton of Creeds, but I wanted to sell them all because I wanted to spend the money on perfume making. And at the time, I was sort of like a little, a little snooty about modern fragrance, or a little snooty about like commercial fragrance. And I grew out of that really quickly, thankfully. And I thought, like, I don't need these Creeds. I'm just going to sell all of them. And I sold like Acier Aluminium, and Green Valley, and Bois de Portugal, and Tabarome, and Orange Spice. I used to have all of these. It's just sold them all. I was like, yeah, I don't really need these anymore. I could use the money for something else. I regret it because I lost so many of them. The Bois de Portugal is still in production. I don't know how it smells these days, but those others are like ridiculously expensive now. There's a few other. A beautiful creation by Bertrand Duchefort, Bois d'Ambry, from Eau d'Italie. I used to have it and wore it off and on a long time ago, and then I sold my bottle of that. I had like a good 75% left, and I rebought that. That's one that I rebought. There's a few others. I can't think of them off the top of my head, but it's happened a few times. It sure has. One that I was actually thinking of rebuying again. I'm not sure if I will, but Azzaro Visit. I sold it because I thought it was kind of cheap smelling, but then somebody sent me a sample of it, not knowing that I was already familiar with it, and I'm like, oh, this actually isn't that bad after all. Yeah, Avon. It'd be great to do an Avon stream with Derek, Scented Devil, Veneris Verderi. He is like the king of Avon. Like, he knows his Avon. He has like a huge collection. I mean, I do pretty good for myself, but I didn't get so deep into it like he did. But I have a number of them, like 12. I'd say that's a lot for a perfume collector because most people don't even want to touch Avon. And it's a shame. And Justin sent Ramsey some Avon samples. Clint Olan, Deep Woods. Yeah, I love Clint. I have Clint back here. I have Oland. Oland is a cool bottle as well. Did you ever hear back from him? How long ago did you send them to him? That is in fact true. I'm not sure what happened. I hope he's okay. He was supposed to be our guest panelist, which is why this is an effluvium and not just me flying solo. I have not gotten any word from him. Something may have happened, or he just got cold feet. Don't know, but it's a shame. And Tripler, you are already asked. I already answered that question. Sorry. And GMG answered the question for Justin. Go figure. Mardi, thank you. Canon, yes. Oh, God bless the USA, indeed. And all other countries. There you go. Keep that parentheses there, because God bless all of us on this earth. Jesus Christ. I'm not a Christian, so it's just an expression. But may all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. Thank you very much for the super chat. Current Yatagan is great. I have the older, and you're not missing much. It is marginally different. Just a little bit more of a stronger Castoreum Accord, but you're not. Don't get FOMO over that. Don't worry. Cartier does do some great bottles. I like Le Baiser du Dragon. Le Baiser du Dragon is a great bottle, and it has sort of that similar, sort of like this, like a hobnail that goes in as this one does. It has that as well. Okay. Avon bottles are kitschier than K. I love them though. They're so cool. It is a lot like Aramis. It does have that similar feel to it. Such a breezy looking bottle with the script and the stripes on the cat. All right, folks. So we're running on over 3 hours here. I've finally run out of stream. No pun intended. Run out of steam. 33 people on. I think that it's good to stop while the going is good. I want to thank all of you for attending this stream. I do apologize that our guest could not make it. I will follow up when I can to let you know whether our guest was okay. Or not. I don't know what happened. That's just a first for me. I've never had a guest do a no-show. I've had cancellations, which are considerate, because that gives me time to kind of prepare. But in this case, that did not happen, and that is unfortunate. So we got some good stuff that's coming up, and just want to let you know what we have coming up. I do this at the end of every stream, so we'll start off with that. We'll get our lovely theme music playing here. If you're curious, this is Veloce Part 2. It's actually the description is in the name of the track, and the artists are in the description. Claude Bolling is one of the artists, actually the pianist on this. So next week we are going to have one of the YouTubers you should know, but you don't already know. And that is Sebastian Furtado. And he is great at painting a picture when describing fragrance, and he has exquisite taste. He's going to be joining us in the discussion on Tuesday the 18th with another perfumer from our Independent Perfumer series. She's also going to be a guest panelist, Emily from Shelter and Perfume. That will be next Tuesday, the 25th. We're going to have 2 individuals from the beloved Les Odorants podcast, James, otherwise known as Houdini SOTD, and Fliss Sniff Stuff. That will be a 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time stream. May 2nd, still yet undecided. Keeping that date open for a confirmation, waiting on that confirmation. Hopefully I'll get that filled very soon. May 9th, Miskeo Parfums, Marie-Pierre Blanchette, along with Pep. And May 16th, we have Pia Long, the wonderful perfumer, very talented and riveting lady. I'm glad that she can join us. May 23rd, Roberto Dario, perfumer, St. Clair's Diane. And May 30th will be the finale for Effluvium. Robes 08 will be our guest panelist, and Margie Noir will be on summer recess for the weekly Effluvia until September 19th, but we will be having monthly special editions of Effluvia. And with all the expressed enthusiasm for my doing these solos, I may do more of them in the future on a regular basis. So stay tuned for that. And I hope everybody has a great morning, afternoon, or evening, depending on where you are in the globe. And take care. Bye-bye now. Stay safe.